I'm looking at you. And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Wednesday, November 6th. We're back. No basketball yesterday. 12 games on the docket for today. Let's have some fun. Hit the like button as you get in the door. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. And then follow my co-host at Chris Spags, because this is Chris Spags. What's going on, man?
Yeah, it's a totally normal day in America. Nothing out of the norm here, but excited to be back in basketball. It's a fun slate. Do love these DK slates where you have the $5 entry fee, so you can take a few more shots at the moon if you're not wanting to max out at the higher dollars. So I think that's always a positive, but it's an interesting slate. We've had guys already, downgraded to doubtful, upgraded to questionable, have some weird ass chalk, some very logical chalk, but like some that's like kind of crazy ownership wise. So slate this big, it's a really clearly defined slate, I feel like.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. I had a fun time blasting through it for the strategy show earlier today. There's wild, heavy value and the ability to just rotate through other dudes that you like. So we got a lot to talk about in 55 minutes to do it. Are you ready?
Are you ready? You got to do it like full Michael Buffer style, I think.
I don't have it. I don't have it.
Really? You seem energized.
My voice does not support that tone. It just sounds, if I do that, it sounds like the most effeminate way to ask you if you're ready.
See, like my voice is like pretty soft naturally, but I could do like the Hulk Hogan brother. Let me see, like, hey, Macho Man. I could do all those.
I can get into that, but not in like the yelly way. Yeah. I can get Macho Man a little bit. Dave Cunningham. You can get there. I gotta hear it a little bit, but once I can get into that one.
Okay, there's something to build off of there.
But I can never get like high and deep at the same time. I mean, I can get high and deep at the same time, but I don't mean with my voice. On that note, the Detroit Pistons are 2-point favorites in Charlotte, 221 total. Not a ton to write home here for Detroit. It's Cunningham, it's Tobias Harris, it's Jaden Ivey, and not much else. Those three guys are in double digits in ownership, but light double digits on DK. Only Ivy got there on the FanDuel side. Let's talk about those three guys first, and then I want to put a pin in Jalen Duren. So what do you like at the top end of Detroit?
So I'm getting the same thing, basically. You mentioned low teens ownership for Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Tobias Harris. I am bravely holding hands to that exact amount that Josh mentioned, which is pretty much right with the field as well. I'm a little bit lower on Ivy, who's closer to 15%, but we're probably splitting hairs at that point. They all look pretty fine to me. Cade in this matchup, I think in particular, feels like he has a real ceiling, going tete-a-tete, going head-to-head with LaMelo potentially. So I think that feels okay to me in terms of the game theory of it, but really nice prices on these guys. Hard to fall in love with them on a slate this big, but I think they all seem like perfectly viable parts if you don't want to have the late swap ability, to go through later on.
Yeah, I have 10% of Cade, 7 of Tobias Harris, 13 of Jaden Ivey. There's just like, those guys are great filler. They can end up in a lineup. How do you feel about Jalen Duren today? He's 5,900. He's 6% owned. And he's got a date with a Charlotte team that doesn't really have a legitimate center on the team. You want to call Taj Gibson one or Moussa Diabate one. I don't think that's a giant impediment to Duren. And maybe he gets a steady date of Grant Williams. He can pull down 20 boards. Do you look at Duren differently today?
I've got Duren projected well per minute. 1.06. He's been at 1.1 for the year. But like in terms of the minutes, I know you mentioned this a few times as well with Isaiah Stewart. It's just he takes enough off the table there. Certainly, I guess he could theoretically carve a few minutes away, but even that, like based on the rotations, doesn't seem like it happens that often. So Duren would have to be so efficient in his 28 minutes that it makes it a little bit hard to play him on a slate where Goga Bitadze to me looks like one of the better plays, and he's a little bit cheaper. I have a higher projection for him flat out. So not a Jalen Duren slate to me. I do like him as a concept, but they just don't give him the run they did like earlier last year. I feel like they gave him like a lot of opportunity, and now it's just they're locked into him and Stewart, basically sharing the same center workload.
Jalen Duren, 4.8% foul rate this year, up from 3.7 last year. That's 24th percentile for bigs. He has been quite foul happy so far. I don't have anything else for Detroit. You get some shares of Beasley or Hardaway, it's fine, but like not guys that I want to get to.
Yeah, I got a little more than the field of Beasley, so I think he's an okay value in a slate where you don't really need it, but if he gives you one more value guy for stars and scrubs, I think he works.
So the next thing that we need to talk about, the Charlotte Hornets, and they got a little bit more confusing earlier today. LaMelo is questionable already without Nick Richards. So the LaMelo piece, if he happens to be out, will be big. This team is getting no ownership. 2% to LaMelo on DraftKings. LaMelo got to 7 on FanDuel. That's the highest of anybody here. If he's in, are you looking at anything from Charlotte?
No, I think I got like one share of Grant Williams because he's power forward center and he's getting enough minutes. Besides that, nothing looks that good. If LaMelo were out, would open up a lot here, and Trey Mann in particular, I think would become probably one of the chalk plays of the day amidst the slate. There's a lot of very obvious chalk plays on the day. But yeah, I think Trey Mann projects okay for me if you apply his 2024 rates where he has been using the ball a little bit more, 26% assist rate or 26% usage rate, 25% assist rate overall, 1.1 fantasy points per minute. So I think Trey Mann looks okay right now, but would look infinitely better if LaMelo's out. But even that, I didn't get him in a sim. It's hard to slate the size quantity of the Hornets if LaMelo is in today.
And then if he's out, I assume we're getting to quite a bit of Trey Mann. Brandon Miller looks quite a bit better. Miles Bridges probably looks a little bit better. Seth Curry might work his way back into at least being in a discussion, but such a bad per minute dude that I don't know with all the good value we have now, he might not be able to be the one that gets there. Josh Green still cheap, also terrible per minute, but I'm guessing we end up getting like a pretty sizable chunk of Trey Mann.
Yeah, fully.
Let's put that one to bed. Go to Orlando. 5-point dogs in Indy, 227 total. Orlando without Paolo Banchero, without Wendell Carter Jr. That's resulting in some ownership here. 22% to Jalen Suggs on DraftKings, 22% to Franz Wagner on FanDuel, a little bit lighter on DK, he's like 10. And then we have 15 on both sites going to Goga Batadze, 4,800 as well on both sites, just center only. Start with whoever you would like, but I'm kind of with you on the Goga train.
Yeah, Goga and Suggs to me both look like 45% plays. For this spot, I think they both have been playing well overall, obviously over a large enough sample size. But Suggs taking a big leap this year, averaging 1.22 fantasy points per minute, 25% usage, 27% assist rate, does add some steals as well. So like that's a positive. Shooting well to start the year at 59% true shooting. Like he's playing, said this a few times with Josh, but like, and thankfully it's been working out in a lot of slates. He's playing like the guy I kind of thought he'd be coming out of college. And he started so slow, obviously a lot of usage hogs in the lineup, but now you have, guys like Cole Anthony, not even really in the rotation. So it's all his backcourt. And having Banchero out there opens up so much. So I do love Suggs, even though the ownership is getting a little bit high for him and the price tag still inching up a little bit. And Goga has just been a monster in court time where there isn't Wendell out there. No Banchero. That's small sample size stuff, but even the historical rates look pretty good for him. Contributes in every category. Today, I would have him a little bit higher projected than most. I've got him at 34 fantasy points, which feels a little bit lofty. But I'm comfortable with the play, his opportunity. Concern is really having Mo Wagner there. So if I were to choose between the two, I like the value of Goga, but I think Suggs is the better play. But Goga is, if he gets these minutes and he's getting the starting job, which he had over the weekend, I think he should be good to go.
Yeah, he's in 28% of my lineups right now. I'm very happy about that. I don't really think that's going anywhere. I have him as the best point per dollar play on Orlando. I'm also interested in Tristan da Silva, assuming he starts again. 3,900, small forward, power forward eligible, only 3% owned. To me, he's kind of getting slept on as a value piece. If he's just going to be a guy that plays 30 minutes or more against an indie team who's absolutely terrible defensively, they're out of backup centers that are any good. Their best wing defender isn't playing. Like, this is a really bad defense for Indy. Kind of looks good to me for Tristan da Silva, assuming he's starting.
Yeah, not a bad price tag for him. The projection's not doing a lot for me, but on this slate, definitely a more unique value than all the other ones, which will be people will be seeing coming from a mile away.
Any interest in Franz? He's not really showing up much for me. I don't expect to get a ton. I might have him a little under projected, but I don't think the 10% ownership is crazy.
No, I got 5% of them, and honestly wouldn't be opposed to getting a little bit more, especially with all that ownership going Suggs and Batadze's way potentially. And if Mo Wagner were to start too, I think it probably would flip the ownership to him being one of the chalkier plays on the slate as well.
Yeah.
So no matter what with Wagner, you're probably getting some leverage on that. So I like that, and it should be a competitive game. Indiana, we know, plays with some pace, not a lot of defense. So yeah, Wagner feels a little bit slept on because he just hasn't had the big outlier game yet like Suggs has and previously like Banchero
had. King Rock Kid said Jokic is clearly the MVP this year. No way he doesn't win it. I would be shocked if he wins it. Absolutely shocked.
It seems not gonna be good enough.
Nope.
Yeah.
No, he would have to like these guys miss a ton of time. They salvage like a 500 record and he averages a triple double type shit. It would take something staggering because there's just going to be too many really good teams with like half step behind Jokic type dudes, and that's just going to be the reward.
Yeah, but MVP of today's slate in my mind.
Yeah, he's the best player in the league, that for sure. But that team is not going to have enough talent for him to get that. Let's talk Indy. So we're waiting on the news for Andrew Nembhard. He is questionable. Aaron Nesmith is out, and then anybody that can play center that isn't Miles Turner has blown out their Achilles. There's no ownership coming into the Pacers on DraftKings. Highest is 8, but it's 6 Halliburton, 7 Siakam, 8 Mathurin, 7 Turner. On FanDuel, it's a little bit more. Halliburton, Siakam, and Mathurin all just snuck over the 10% mark. I'm getting a little bit of my guy Halliburton, who was dreadful the last time I did this, but the most I have of anybody here is 17% to Halliburton. I'm getting a little bit of all the dudes that are getting ownership, but I'm right around the field.
I'm getting almost 2x on Mathurin. I think the price tag and shooting guard small forward works fairly well. So I don't mind that. The usage for these guys has been really split. Nobody above 25% usage. Miss Halliburton, Siakam, Turner, and Mathurin to start the year. They're all kind of flat, which I know if you default to like the longer term sample, you're going to like Halliburton more, you're going to like Siakam more. But for what it's been to start the year, feels like fairly intentionally. Like Mathurin's getting pretty good work at his price tag. I think that, again, that 5K salary range for shooting guard small forward, I think makes a lot of lineups work. So I don't mind that. Turner got 9% of him, which is okay. Siakam 5%. Turner, I think, is more of an interesting play just because the center position, how that works. People will be playing Batadze. People will be playing Jokic. You get to a middle price guy. I think it works for a certain amount. And there's no backup, like Josh has mentioned enough times. So that probably helps out Turner a little bit. The spot against Orlando where there's at least 2 semi-credible bigs. But really, nothing a priority here. If I didn't get Mathurin, I wouldn't be mad about it if he just disappeared in the next sim.
By the way, Goga Batadze, revenge narrative alert tonight, just in case anybody cares.
He's been like, I miss Indiana so much. I just want to be back. I miss Hoosiers.
Yeah, I'm going to have a little bit of all these indie dudes. None of them look like a stand to me. It's sort of like the way that I was looking at the first 3 guys from Detroit. They're just sort of like 10% filler across the board.
Yeah.
There are priorities on this slate, and we will get to quite a few of them. We're honestly kind of on some of them now. The New York Knicks are 7-point favorites in Atlanta, 227 total. We have a Q tag on Cam Payne. Now, I am not confident that man plays today. I don't think that really matters all that much. God, this ownership. 15% to Bridges, 18 to Hart, 20 to Anunoby, 12 to Brunson, 12 to Towns. I have all 5 of those guys. It would be really surprising if you're playing a chunk of lineups and you didn't. The most I have of anybody is Brunson. The least I have of anybody is Towns. 40 of Brunson, 30 of Hart, 30 of Anunoby, 15 of Bridges, 10 of Towns. I don't know how you don't get to the Knicks starters. They're going to play a ton. They're never coming off the floor. Positions all look great. Atlanta stinks. This is great.
Yeah, Josh Hart, I think, has worked for like every slate for the last week or so. Continues to be the case here. I got him in 33% of lineups. He's projected for 15% ownership now. Actually, no, 18%. Sorry about that. So a little bit higher, but still not where he was as chalk the last couple slates. So I think for Josh Hart, price tag works. The fact he's projected for 37.5 minutes, that looks pretty good. Guy in the least of the 5 is Mikal Bridges. I just don't think he projects as well as Anunoby and Hart relative to salary. And frankly, the projections are flat enough that I'd rather just play Hart and Anunoby straight up over Bridges for the most part. So not crazy about that one. Towns, I'm above the field on. He's been crushing this year, just shy of 1.4 fantasy points per minute. I think the numbers look pretty good. And going to get spot 2 in Atlanta, assuming we're getting enough run out there, you have to have him out there for enough time because of the bigs that they have. And he's just producing at a really good rate, the best rate of anybody on the team. So at 8,100, I think that looks pretty good if you can't afford to pay up all the way. Brunson, I'm the lowest on, though. Feel like his rates are suffering a little bit. The production's suffering a little bit with just having so many guys who need some usage and some time with the ball in their hands. Certainly can spike here, but and he does hate Trae Young, so maybe I'm missing a little bit there. But I don't think Brunson for me on the slate is like a priority.
Okay, I think he just carves up this Atlanta team. The Hunter news will be interesting because that'll soften them up a bit. We also got David Roddy added to the list as a questionable play. I want to hit this super chat from Brad Kaufman quickly. He said, Josh, how do I move lineups from Sims to DK to put into my lineups tonight? There's a video on YouTube that will outline how to use the entry manager, but that can all be managed inside of our sims. You just upload your CSV that has all of your lineups in it from DraftKings. You could add your lineups in the sim tool directly by clicking the add to portfolio button. I think that's what it says at least. And you can assign them to whatever contest you're in. It will export that CSV right back out with all of your lineups in the correct spot, and you can upload that immediately. It's never been easier to put your lineups together in the Stokastic Sims now, but there is a tutorial video that I recorded on YouTube. Jordan's putting it in chat right now. Oh, God, this is going to be a long day. All right, let's talk about Atlanta. They are completely unowned. 1% to Jalen Johnson is all we're showing right now. And like I said, we're still waiting on the news for DeAndre Hunter. We're waiting on the news for David Roddy. It's possible that Dominic Barlow or Mohamed Gay are available here. They are listed as questionable. They are G League guys. I don't think it matters right now. Maybe if Hunter and Roddy are both out, we can squeeze a little bit of value here, but this team does not look good at all.
Your Roddy's barely in the projections right now, so it doesn't really impact things too much. Hunter being out, I think, would open up Johnson a little bit more, but his price tag is still up quite a bit. And Trey, you're still paying for the price tag for when he almost went for 70 last week, so I feel like that's kind of a tough spot to be in. The matchup, going against the Knicks, do play a little bit slower. That's not great. It should be better, but these guys are now fully priced in for not having, the Bogdans of the world, enough offense out there. The team themselves suck. Feels like there's a chance they could just get blown off the court tonight. Trey coming off the rib either. Like, even if you wanted to kind of hold your nose and go, I'll pay to be contrarian here, it just Luka projects so much better. The other high dollar plays project so much better. Tatum on the wing projects so much better. So I don't know how you get to anything here besides maybe a little bit of Jalen Johnson.
Yeah, I'd be okay. Jalen Johnson definitely is the guy that looks the best to me. But God, it's bleak. It's bleak. They're probably the worst team on the slate right now.
Yeah, Toronto's playing above their heads. I mean, obviously they're not on the DK slate, but they're on the FanDuel one. But honestly, they're worse than Toronto right now, I think.
Oy. All right. 3 games up, 3 games down. Might have to pick up the pace a hair, but we're going to be okay. Schedule for the rest of the day is very simple. You stay on this stream, you get to 500 likes, or the screen goes black. If you get to 500 likes, NBA Live Before Lock will start up at 6 p.m. Greg and Eric breaking down these games and taking you all the way up until lock. And then Greg and I are hopping over to playback. We're there right now, but we'll be there at 7 o'clock to watch games for an hour at a minimum, but probably just an hour. If you want to go there, go to playback.tv/Stokastic. We give out 20 VIP passes so you can watch the games along with us. If you have League Pass, you can just link your League Pass and watch along with us. Really fun experience. Love to hang out, talk DFS, talk betting, put some bets in, whatever we can find. It's going to be a good day. So come join us on Playback because we have basketball back today. We didn't have this yesterday. Golden State Warriors are incredibly annoying and useless on this slate, but they are 6-point dogs in Boston, 229 total. Brandon Pajemski is questionable for this one, but I'm not sure it matters. No one is getting any ownership on DraftKings. All I see is zeros. That means it rounds down. Draymond did get to a crisp 1% on FanDuel. I see no scenario where I'm going to be getting to a Golden State Warrior today, regardless of Pajemski.
Yeah, no, nothing looks good here. They're all priced for Curry's timeout for the most part. It looks like Curry himself priced for maybe the player that he is in the past and not so much the guy who's been so far based on the usage and assist rate coming down a little bit, though he has been pretty efficient so far in the year with 1.46 fantasy points per minute. But yeah, I don't see anything here that useful. Again, point guard, there's so many options you can go to. I don't really want to get to Steph on a day where he's not projected that well. Buddy Hield, I got in like one lineup in the sim in 150. So I'll just say that out loud, but everything else here, nothing, and nobody's going to be here. So tournament play for sure.
Yeah. This whole team is like random pivots. The Boston side is slightly different. Now we got to wait on the starting lineup here for Boston. I would not be surprised in any way if it wasn't the same as it was last time out. Still no Jaylen Brown, 15% ownership to Tatum, just shy of that to Derek White, and then 17% ownership right now to Kata, who got the start last time out. I don't think that he has to today. I think this is going to be important information that we potentially will have to swap for. But how do you feel about Tatum? How do you feel about White?
Getting more White than Tatum. White, I think, tends to be the biggest beneficiary for me with Jaylen Brown out. Just the usage goes up so much higher. A 27% usage, 21% assist rate compared to his usual 21 and 19 for those two categories. So I like that for Derek White overall at his price point as well. Got him in 19% of sim lineups, so not a crazy stand relative to the field, but with him projected for 12% ownership, it's a little bit more. So I would highlight that as White being a credible play if you're not going to some of the other guys that are going to be a little bit chalkier, a little more obvious, and Jalen Suggs. Tatum I like, but I'd rather play Jokic by a pretty wide margin today. So I don't think I got a lot of stars and scrub stuff, but I didn't go to my way to grab them, including Tatum. I think he's a good play today. I have no issue with him. I only got him at 7% of lineups though, because I think he just, to me, gets dwarfed by Luka and Jokic tonight.
So I have 23% at Tatum right now, which I think is fine. I think we're going to have plenty of salary to go around. So I wouldn't be surprised if I have a decent, I'm pretty confident I already have a boatload of Jokic. I'm just going to type it in quick just to see. Yeah, he's in an overwhelming amount. I think I'm just going to have a lot of the high dollar guys because we have infinite salary. I got to 20% to Derek White. I do think that he looks like the best Boston option on a like overall basis. You know, has a ceiling. Salary isn't crazy. Will play big minutes, barring foul trouble, blowouts, or injury. The K to piece is just sort of like a placeholder for me right now. If he is the starter, great. He's 3,200. That's a really nice price, and he can fill up the stat sheet a bit. I got him at like 1.07 fantasy points per minute. If it ends up being Fournette, he'll probably look okay. Nothing crazy. If it ends up being Hauser, he'll look a little bit better. If it ends up being Peyton Pritchard, he'll look a little bit better. They can move these things around, and it can be really anything today. My guess is it's one of Keita or Cornette, but if it is Keita, looks like a really nice value.
Feels like such a not a Keita matchup, though. You have him running around on screens.
Is Cornette better at that?
He's a little better, I think.
I think Keita probably moves a little bit smoother than Cornette.
I feel like Keita, I mean, I've watched only, the last couple games since Keita's been really, a part of my life. I feel like he's just such a big stiff. Like, he feels like smaller Taco Fall to me.
Fair. I don't think either of them are particularly great at the task at hand.
No. Cornette could stay in front of a guy a little. He can chase. He'll try.
I don't think it'll matter. Boston's too good.
Yeah, that's also fair.
Anything? Do you like Drew, Peyton Pritchard, Al Horford, any of that stuff?
No, just a little bit. It's got like 5% Pritchard, 7% Keita. I mean, I'm low on him too. Derek White's really, for me, the play on the Celtics. And I would love to get more Tatum. I just don't see it happening with how much I'm into the Jokic and Luka tonight.
Josh Gillum, I would be shocked if Draymond were guarding Tatum. That doesn't make... I assume Draymond's guarding whatever shitty center is out there, and Wiggins is on Tatum. Otherwise, I don't know who the hell you're letting Andrew Wiggins guard, but it's none of these other guys that you need him for. I mean, it's going to be a bunch of guys because Golden State plays everybody 26 minutes a night. So it's going to be 10 different matchups. But I doubt it's Draymond for much of it. Yeah, I got 20% of Tatum, 20 of White, 20 of Keita. I think it'll look like that by the time we get to lock if Keita is the starting center. God, these games, man. San Antonio and Houston. Lowest total on the DraftKings slate. Tied for the lowest total on today's slate with Philly and the Clippers. Spurs are 6.5-point dogs, 215 total in Houston. We are getting a little bit of love into San Antonio. 18% to Wemby, 18% to Chris Paul. The big news here for San Antonio, they're going to be looking a little bit different over the next few weeks. Jeremy Sohan out, broken thumb. So we're not going to be seeing him for a bit. Wouldn't be surprised if that's like January. How do you feel about Wemby? How do you feel about Chris Paul? Is there a guy on San Antonio now that you want to get to now that those Jeremy Sohan minutes are freed up?
So I thought I was going to get some more Chris Paul. I think he's an interesting pivot to Russell Westbrook chalk that we'll talk about in a little bit, I guess, towards the end of the video. But I think for Chris Paul, like similar price point, ball in his hands a lot. He's been assisting at a good rate, not putting up a ton of usage overall so far to start the year. But with Sohan out there, it opens up a lot of opportunities. So I think Chris Paul, I got him at 15%, a little bit lower in the field. I think I would just plant a flag for Chris Paul being worth matching the field on exposure, even though, there's going to be plays that come up a little more easily, I think, on an optimizer or a sim. Wemby, I'm lower on. I just think that AD is the better play. Paying up for Jokic, I like more. Paying down for Towns, I think I like a little more relative to the value. Wemby, look, almost up a triple-double the other day without assists, with just getting there with blocks. Hard to ignore stuff like that against, especially in a match against Şengün, who just has no lift in his legs whatsoever.
Yeah.
So for Wemby, I don't hate the play, but I don't think it's a priority for me. And nothing else seems that great. Stephon Castle, I think an okay guy at the wing. Reasonable price tag for him, projected for 28 minutes. But Chris Paul, to me, I think is like the primary play I would want to get some exposure to.
I'm pretty light on him right now. I'll probably take a look at how I have him projected after the show to see if I'm missing anything or I'm off with some rates. I didn't get to Wemby, but I think that's probably just because I'm soaking up most of my center exposure with Jokic, who just projects better than he does. So I think that's just kind of boxing out Wemby, especially since he's getting 18% ownership and Jokic is slightly less than that. I have Jokic as a much better play. So it makes sense to me that I'm not getting to Wemby. And if I get a scattered amount of Castle or Champagne, I think that's okay. Castle, not going to be a very good per minute dude. He's going to need defensive stats to save his life. Champagne also not a very good per minute dude. Houston, Q-tag Dylan Brooks, Q-tag Tari Eason. Those two Q-tags are quite important for what we end up looking at for the Rockets, because right now we're not really looking at anything. 11% ownership to Amin Thompson on DraftKings is the only double-digit mark on DK or FanDuel for Houston. I'm not really getting to anybody other than Thompson. But if Brooks ends up out, if Eason ends up out, if they both end up out, then we're going to start having some conversations, because Reed Shepherd's sitting there at 3,400, and I assume they throw some minutes at him. It'd be fun to see how that ends up looking. Amin Thompson probably gets a pretty significant minutes bump and goes from an 11% owned dude to much higher. What do you want to do here with Houston, or is this just sort of a wait and see approach?
Wait and see for me. I did get Tari Eason earlier in the day in some of the higher ROI lineups I had, because I think, again, that price tag, dual position eligibility works pretty well. That $4,500 to $5,000, maybe a little bit higher than that range. Besides that, I get a little bit of Şengün on most slates. I would get 3% of him today, so basically with the field on him. But yeah, I'm actually low on Amin Thompson. I'm not getting much of anything else here. So really, to me, I think it needs something to open up. But Eason being a part of high ROI lineups, I don't mind. He does produce well per minute. Just feels like I'm kind of paying the price tag for him having the big game a couple games ago. Then I don't know that that's what you want to do on a slate of this size.
Yeah, if one of these dudes is out, Amin Thompson's going to end up looking a lot better. 4,600 fantasy point per minute, guard forward eligibility. All it takes is one. If they're both in, then he becomes like a wild card, because he could play his way into more minutes. They've had no trouble taking Jabari Smith or Alperen Şengün off and going to a different look. So he has some upside. We lose one of those wings, things look a lot better. All right. Hills sent a super chat. Is there a better play than Najee? No. Price Productions sent a really nice super chat. Is there enough value to get both Tatum and Jokic in a reasonably competitive lineup? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, you get Luka and Jokic. So yeah, I think you can definitely get Tatum and Jokic if that's the way you want to build.
Yeah, I assume I have quite a few of those, given the amount of Jokic that I have, and I had enough Tatum. Just trying to take a peek. I'm sure that exists. Either way, yeah, the answer is pretty much always yes, especially on a day like today. All righty, game 6. Lakers, 1.5 point dogs in Memphis, 231.5 total. This is the highest total on today's slate. This one's actually a little weird because we have had a journey with Rui Hachimura today. He went from not on the injury report to questionable, or sorry, not on the injury report to doubtful to now questionable for this one. AD is questionable. Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell both probable. Everybody else that's normally out is out. Now, prior to running this, without Rui in, we were getting 20% ownership to LeBron, 12 to Reeves, around 10 to AD. Those are DraftKings numbers. AD and LeBron were both around 20 on the FanDuel side. So I have no idea if AD or Rui are playing. Let's assume for a second they're both in. What do you like from the Lakers?
So they did update ownership with him in too, I think. So
nice. We did get that.
Yeah. So LeBron under 20%, 19.9. Reeves with 12.4, AD with 13.4, and Russell with 5.1, and Rui himself getting 2.6 is where it was at.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so my sim I did run before Rui being in, but they have the ownership, so that's the way that moved around. Before Rui was ruled back in, or potentially, back in the projections at the very least, I was getting a little bit more of AD, a little bit more of Austin Reeves in particular. We got 21% Austin Reeves. I think he jumps up a good amount here with just the stats left behind by Rui not being out there. Rui himself has had enough usage on the year that it should open up a little production overall. Seems like it could open some minutes for other guys here, but I remember from before Rui being in the projections, Jackson Hayes didn't look that good. Like nobody else really gained enough here for it to matter. So I think the plays still come down mostly to AD, LeBron, and Reeves. I'm low on LeBron today overall, unless AD gets ruled out. I think AD is a better play between the two of them, but LeBron feels like could be mega chalk because I do think the sim really liked LeBron earlier, and I'm just not quite as high on him.
Yeah, I'm light on LeBron. I always am, but I'm about half the field on LeBron, 2xing Reeves, not really getting to AD. We'll see what this ends up looking like depending on how news shakes out. If AD ends up out, we're going to have a conversation about how Jackson Hayes is now a value center. Add him to the list of everybody else that we're going to end up talking about. And then I would expect Christian Coloco to play a little bit. You're not going to roster him, but I think you would be getting to Jackson Hayes in the starting lineup at that point. And then if Rui is also out, we might have a little bit more value. Cam Reddish probably gets some decent run, shooting guard, small forward eligible, flat min salary on both sites. So lots to wait for here, but it's Jackson Hayes if AD ends up out. Memphis Grizzlies side. Not a lot of ownership coming in here. We're waiting on the Q tag for Luke Kennard. They're still missing like a few other dudes. But it's single digit ownership on DK. 7% to Morant is the high. It's single digit ownership to everybody on FanDuel. 8% to Morant is the high. I actually got 11% of Jaren Jackson Jr., which I'm cool with. I don't think he looks amazing or anything, but I don't mind that that's there. Small amount of Morant, nothing else. I don't find this team to look all that great. Go ahead.
Oh, no. Yeah, I mean, I'm on the same page with you. Let's try to save some time. Yeah, Morant, I've got 5%. ED, I got 2% of. I think you talked about it on the strategy show this morning where if AD's out, I think he does become a more compelling play, just being able to post up Jackson Hayes, and Jackson Hayes is going to offer some resistance, but maybe not a ton for a post technician, we'll call him, like Zach Edey. But I think it's Morant, nothing else here besides maybe some tournament Santi Aldama. Even that I don't really love.
Yeah, I have one lineup with Santi Aldama in it. They're just not that appealing of a team. One thing I want to put out into the universe, I talked a little bit about it on the strategy show. If Anthony Davis happens to be out, I think Zach Edey becomes an interesting tournament play.
I just
said we saw what he did. What'd you say?
I just said that exact thing and incited you saying it on the strategy show. You got Lofty in there. You got Lofty.
I did. Spags is smart. Everything he said is what you should do. I was reading chat and responding to somebody and came back to it and didn't think you were saying that.
Fair. No, look, we're on the same page. I heard you say it like great point, but I had to call you out on it because it was
pay attention to matchups where Zach Edey gets to play against centers that aren't very good or centers that don't exist, like it was for Brooklyn 2 nights ago. That felt like an old school Lofty Adam show.
But it was such a good point though, and the main thing is I gave you the attribution. I should have just not given you attribution, but like, and here's the thing. Here's a brilliant point I have about Zach Edey.
You should have. My bad. Haven't done that many times on this show. That's fun. Starting lineup for the Magic. Well, let's start here. Kevin Huerter available to play. DeAndre Hunter ruled out. Starting lineup for the Magic is Suggs, Caldwell Pope, Tristan Da Silva, Franz Wagner, Goga Batadze. David Roddy in, DeAndre Hunter out.
So Roddy, probably not really a play on this slate, but we'll look a little better.
Okie dokie, guys. We're up to 223 likes. I'm going to let you guys know right now, not enough. Hit that thumbs up. We got to run that number up a little bit higher. We want to get to 500 by the time we turn this one over. What I want you guys to do, though, is check out the description of this video, because you can get a lot of the tools that we have for a relatively minimal outlay for you. And by minimal, I mean signing up at some other site. We have a link join going on in our description. You click that. You can get Stokastic Sims for free by signing up using that link and picking whichever spot you're looking for. There are tons of deals if you're looking to get in at Stokastic. For example, if you're a sportsbook guy, there are deals for BetMGM, Caesars, Bet365. If you're on DraftKings or FanDuel, if you're a pick'em person and haven't signed up at some of these sites, Better, Sleeper, Underdog. We've got Rebet, Pick Six, Vivid Picks. There's a laundry list of different sites that you can sign up for by using our links. You'll get a bonus when you get there, and you'll get our tools for free. There's really not much better there. If you haven't signed up at some of these other sites, we cover them. You can get bonuses when you sign up and get the tools to play on those sites. So click that link in the description. Sign up whatever site is most interesting to you. If you haven't signed up at one of those sports books, do it. If you haven't signed up at one of those pick'em sites and you can, do that as well. Game 7. Cleveland Cavaliers, 7-point favorites in New Orleans, 223 total. Cleveland has a Q tag on Karis LeVert and a Q tag on Jalen Tyson. Dean Wade is out for this one. No one getting ownership on DraftKings, 4% to Garland, 4% to Mobley. It's a little higher on FanDuel, 12 to Garland. And then Allen, Mobley, and Mitchell are all around 7. I have nothing from Cleveland here. I anticipate them not struggling much with New Orleans, especially if they end up missing a couple guys. But I have a hard time getting to Cleveland at this moment because I think their prices are just correct. All these main dudes have just been in the entire time. Everything is sort of stabilized for Cleveland. So it's hard for me to see any value.
Yeah, I mean, Mobley, even with a little bit more usage, still, I think if you were to reflect this year's rates where he's up to, 24% usage, a little bit more assists, well, assists are flat. I think he'll look pretty much like a 5X guy, which is okay. That he and Jared Allen, Garland, like they're all okay, like around 5X value on this slate. You just have so many other preponderances of values, other spots that's hard to go there. Mitchell, I will point out, between his usage rate and assist rate, having the ball in his hands a little bit less than Darius Garland on the year, which is a bit of a surprise to me and feels like, flippening that happens in the regular season probably doesn't happen in the playoffs. But right now, though, Mitchell does seem like, and I noticed this the other day because I played a Ty Jerome in a lineup and was like, this guy works his value. He actually was deferring to Ty Jerome a little bit more than I would have thought. So I looked up the rates and was like, he's deferring more this year, which is good for the team, good for their long-term prospects. For fantasy right now, Mitchell, a little bit overvalued for what he's been historically in the historical rates. But overall, these guys, I mean, nobody above 5%, and that 5% is 4% to Darius Garland for me.
I have one individual share of Mitchell and nothing else. So I think we're in the same boat, just different backcourt dude. Now, the Pelicans. They're impossible to talk about at this moment. Herb Jones out, Carlo Makovich out, CJ McCollum out, Trey Murphy out, DeJounte Murray out. We don't stop there. Q tag on Jose Alvarado, who's been playing like 34 minutes a night. Q tag on Jordan Hawkins, who's basically doing the same. And Q tag on Zion, who basically does the same. If they're all out, you're going to end up with a lot of the Pelicans. Like, everybody starts to look amazing. If 2 of them are out, it's probably the same story. If 1 of them is out, someone's going to look really good. Depends on which guy is out. If Hawkins ends up out, we're going to look at Brandon Boston. If Zion ends up out, we're going to look at a different team. But, we're going to reallocate a lot of usage, a lot of ball handling, a lot of minutes to the bigs. If Alvarado ends up out, they are in deep trouble. But at that point, if we don't get Alvarado, I think the only natural spot that they can go at that point is going to be to Jalen Noel. All of this is up in the air and we need this news. Do you have any extra thoughts here for the Pels or anything you're paying attention to? Anybody that you don't think, do you just want to have a conversation about Brandon Ingram regardless? I don't think he's that interesting if everybody's in. That will change if they're out.
Same page with you. I don't think these guys are playable right now. I think Alvarado, again, maybe as a pivot to Russ Chalk, I think you can play him if he were in, but obviously the Q tag on him makes that a pretty big question. Yeah, this could be the most important part of the night or the most important spot of the night if multiples of these guys get rolled out, as Josh was saying there. Brandon Boston in particular seems like he'll soak up a lot of usage based on how it's been so far. There's multiples of guys out, especially in the backcourt and wing. But for right now, nothing is playable, and yet Important to have some flexibility, perhaps, because if you get a lot of these guys out, like, I mean, Ingram's going to pop hugely. I think Missy might look, probably still wouldn't be better than Goga. Boston, though, I think would become a real play at shooting guard, small forward.
Yeah, he'll be really good. Depending on how many guys are out, Jamal Cain could look more interesting at 3,400 and small forward eligible, like if they're all out. But if Noel has to take over a large swath of point guard run, that's sort of like the natural path of someone that you're not going to really see talked about. Well, not talked about, but like you're not going to see him if everybody's in, but if everybody's out, he's going to be like incredibly prevalent.
Yeah, 3K minimum too.
Yeah, you'll have to get there. And then, if it's no Zion, there's a 32% usage and 32 minutes to go around. So that will fill out a bunch of other dudes. Luckily for you guys, we're constantly updating our projections on the back end and loading them into the Sims. And we have a late swap tool. So it is perfectly set up for you the moment that news drops. Chicago Bulls, 9.5-point dogs in Dallas, 237.5 total. I misspoke before for the Lakers and Memphis. This game, Chicago and Dallas, has the highest total on today's slate. The Lakers-Memphis game is actually third. So my bad. Didn't see it. Numbers blended together. So for the Chicago Bulls, a team I really just never enjoy talking about. Zach LaVine is questionable. Everybody else that's normally available is available. He did go through shoot around today. The Bulls are full stop unowned. I think the only way that you're really going to be getting too much of Chicago is if LaVine ends up being out and then we get to a ton of Ayo Dosunmu.
Yeah, I'm already getting a little bit of Ayo Dosunmu at 8.5% just because I think he works well at that price. And again, point guard, shooting guard. And I had him in my lineups the other day. He was coming up a lot in my sim lineups when he did go off. So it's not just full point chasey, even though it does feel that way. But everything else here, I agree. Like nothing looks good right now. If LaVine were out, it would open up everything. But this team is like, it's a well-balanced team. It's a good team. I think the kind of team that can hang in with Dallas, which I think is important for the other side of the equation.
God, this team is just so unappealing to me right now.
A lot of high usage guys.
Yeah, like you could take flyers on Vooch or Giddey or LaVine if he's in, but there's not a single thing that's even remotely close to a priority for Chicago. Dallas is a little bit different. I'm going to start immediately with just the injury report. Maxi Kleber out, PJ Washington out, which is a massive piece of information because he played 35 minutes or something like that in their last game. And then a doubtful tag on Derek Lively. That hasn't changed. He's not officially out yet, right? He's still doubtful?
He's doubtful, yeah.
Yeah. So we didn't have him last time out either. Let's talk about the number one play today. 3,400 on DraftKings, small forward, power forward eligible. 3,900 on FanDuel, small forward eligible. And 80% owned on both sites. That would be Najee Marshall, who I fully expect to start, play north of 30 minutes, and be a guy that I just don't see a path to avoiding.
It's projected for 32.4 minutes by Stokastic's data team. So good amount of run out there. So far this year, about 0.8 fantasy points per minute, contributes a little bit in every category. So those are the positive things you want to see. The same thing for him in his career. Really the crush of minutes, the salary, small forward, power forward, sim-wise, unavoidable. I think if you're trying to get tournament brained, it wouldn't be crazy to take him out, resim without him, see how your lineups look, just because that's how sometimes you can win these things. But in terms of the pure, surface play of the slate, what the binary plays are, he's one of the best plays on a slate we've had so far this year, just because he gets in every sim lineup. Salary works. He opens up everything you want to do. And his positions, you're not really missing out on guys you love. So for Najee Marshall, I think he's like a pristine DFS play, unless the chalk bus.
I'm with you. Bruce Booth sent in a super chat. This can be quick. He said, is there any way you can set the Sims to have more spots for Pelican news? And is there a video on how to use late swap? Yes, there's a video on how to use late swap. It is on the YouTube channel. If Jordan can hunt that down, drop that in chat. That would be great. And if you want to have more spots for Pelican news, you need to boost games that start at the same time as the Pelicans and games that start after it. That's really the only way that you can do it. You need to make the games that are starting at that time and later be more appealing than the early games so that you're selecting more lineups that have more of those pieces. It's really the only way that it can be done. Or change the projections on these guys and, get to them now if you'd like to. Make some assumptions. That could work too. 28% ownership coming into Daniel Gafford on DraftKings at 4,500, only 5 on FanDuel at 4,800. And then Luka is around 25% on both sites. Kyrie is just higher than 10 on both sites. What do you want to do with Gafford here? Because we've talked a lot about centers, but with no Derek Lively around, Gafford feels like a pretty good guy to get to here at 4,500.
Yeah, I think I'm getting a little more Goga. I'm not sure if the minutes moved around from Stokastic because the projection for me for Gafford looks really strong. I would Stokastic has him at 28.1, so a good number. I'd have him at 34. So I like Gafford a good amount relative to that. Still have Goga projected slightly higher, but he is a little bit more expensive, I believe. So that's sort of the trade-off there. But you could play them both together. I don't think it'd be crazy. I do love Jokic enough that it's hard for me to commit that way. But Gafford projects really well, 1.15 fantasy points on the minute per minute on the year. Projected for just shy of mostly mid-20s minutes looks like from Stokastic. So didn't maybe get enough of a minutes boost to like where he's unavoidable in lineups, but enough of one that he should be a play that you get to if you're not getting to, I think, Goga or the high price centers.
I've got 30% of them right now, so right with the field, and I have about 15% of Luka. Kyrie's the guy that I'm not really getting to a ton of, but we have so much value that it's not all that difficult to be able to get to Luka, and Najee Marshall is the best play on the slate. Very easy. Very easy. Number 9, OKC, 7-point favorites in Denver, 223 total. Thunder have everybody that they normally have. Nuggets, though, do not. Jamal Murray, still in the concussion protocol. Aaron Gordon now out with a right calf strain. He's going to miss a pretty sizable chunk of time. Got a couple guys here that are sort of like Najee Marshall today. Let's start with the one that is most ridiculously priced on DraftKings, and that would be Russell Westbrook. 5K, for reasons I can't figure out, 64% owned. He's 6,400 on FanDuel, $1,400 more expensive, and he's still 25% owned. If you want to have any idea of how low that DraftKings price is. He's in 83% of my lineups. I wouldn't care if it was 100. He looks great today.
Yeah, I'm at 51 on him, which I'm okay with. I do him a little bit lower than Stokastic right now. And yeah, like, he's still a great play. Like, I think the ownership, though, when it is a little bit higher, and the ownership did come down between when I ran my sim and where it's at right now, where it's down to 63.5% before it's closer to 70. So that might be the difference between getting, a crippling amount of him and just getting a mere 51% of Russell Westbrook. I think the main thing to say is like, he's not the same guy as he was in previous years in terms of like, he's not the guy you're paying 12K for. He's got Jokic there, who I think is still the best play on the slate, but he's still doing enough, 1.02 fantasy points per minute on the year. I'd have him flat with that in this spot. A lot of opportunity to go around, just like they started him last time out. He was fine with it. I don't think it was anything overwhelmingly good, but he makes lineups work. The price tag is too low, as Josh mentioned. And that's basically it in the game. Hopefully it'll be competitive enough and a home revenge game for him. Not going into OKC, but I'm sure he still harbors some ill will.
It's just such a silly price. Like, if Jamal Murray were out for 3 weeks, Russell Westbrook's price would be massively higher than 5K by the time we get to the end of that.
7,500, 7K.
It could, assuming they continue to play him north of 30 minutes and they don't downgrade him for being awful, then yeah, I think it could probably, be mid 6s to around 7. But that's not the only ownership coming into Denver. 32% coming into Peyton Watson on DK, 42 on FanDuel. I'm assuming he's the swap out for Aaron Gordon. I gave him 28 minutes. Looks really good. He's in 44% of my lineups. 3,400 on DK, 3,700 on FanDuel. How do you feel about Peyton Watson?
Yeah, a little bit above the field in him, not quite as much as you are, but at 36%, which I'm okay with. Okay per minute producer, 0.75 on the year. Josh mentioned getting those Aaron Gordon minutes. That was what happened last time out. Second that Gordon went out, it was Peyton Watson, and they're getting that work. So he seems okay at the price point. I feel like relative to the other value plays in the slate, certainly would prefer Najee Marshall by a good amount. But in this spot, I think Peyton Watson works, and he's another one of those guys. If you're just going to pay down stars and scrub kind of build, he's definitely one of the guys that should be priority number 2 or 3 on that list.
Porter Jr. is a little expensive on FanDuel, so he's not that owned, but he's 15 on DraftKings. I think he looks good at 6,200. No Aaron Gordon here now. Probably gets an extra shot or two. Just like a completely reasonable guy to get to.
Yeah, with the field, I feel like for him.
And then I have 63% of Nikola Jokic at this moment, 14% owned, 11-7 on DraftKings. If this game is even remotely competitive, I would be shocked if Nikola Jokic didn't have a pretty nice looking triple-double. It all is going to come down to scoring for him. Like, I think the rebounds and assists happen by default here, especially the rebounding side, because this is not a great OKC rebounding team when Hartenstein's not around. if he is looking for his shot, like he probably needs to try to win a game like this, like 30, 10, and 10 feels just like light work, and he could hang a hell of a number here. I want to pay up for him. He's, to me, the best pay up on the slate by far.
Yep, no, same page. I got 51% of them. I like them a lot. I think people are going to get less of them because Luka looks good, Tatum looks good. Jokic to me is the one to come over the top on. So I'd have him projected tonight for 1.95 fantasy points per minute, which is the highest number I've seen out of anybody. I think maybe besides one time where Giannis had everybody out on Milwaukee. So I think he's a great play. He comes over the top on center. There's a lot of cheap center chalk out there, so you get that as well as a benefit. He's, I think, the best play on the slate, and like every possible way you can consider the best play on the slate.
Yeah, love him. Love to get to him. Christian Brown can be rostered. Julian Strother can be rostered. Neither one of them is a high priority for me, but they are functional options for today. All right, one last call for likes. 2,300 people in the door, 339. That means we need 161 more to get to 500 before we turn this one over to live before lock. Final game on the DraftKings slate. 2 more to go for FanDuel. Miami and Phoenix. Heat, 5.5-point dogs, 221 total. Nothing too crazy here for Miami. Jaime Jaquez is out for this one. Kevin Love still working his way back. 18% ownership coming into Tyler Hero, so it looks a lot like it did on Monday. No real ownership coming into anybody on the FanDuel side. I'm not getting to Hero at this moment. I'm not really getting to Miami in any way. Anybody standing out to you?
I'm getting 2x on Hero, so he does stand out to me. I do have a little bit better project than Stokastic does. I've got him at 40.1. They have him at 36.2, so it's a bit of a discrepancy. The reason mine's higher is because I'm defaulting to the 2024 rates, where Hero's started to put a little bit more out there usage-wise. He's leading the team right now, 27.5% usage. The assist rate, 26%, is just beneath Jimmy Butler, so he's been kind of the ball-dominant guy out there, and you give him 32 minutes of the projection from Stokastic today. I think it's a little bit hard to ignore him. I think the Heat's playable, though. Like, competitive game, these guys aren't, I don't think, too mispriced, but they would be like purely tournament options besides Hero, who I think is worth the ownership.
Yeah, I don't think that his ownership is crazy. I just don't happen to have him here. I had Butler, Bam, and Hero all like just shy of 10% optimal. They look like, Butler and Bam, like they always are perfectly reasonable large field GPP plays, especially on a day where we have a 95,000 person $5 to get into today. Like, a low-owned Butler or a low-owned Bam instead of some other 7K guy that's pulling some love is not the craziest pivot in the world, but they do look worse on a per dollar basis. That's what you're giving up. You're saving ownership to make your lineup a little bit less projected.
Yeah, it is such a Jimmy Butler matchup, though, I feel like. It's like half-courty, competitive, dick measuring contest kind of game.
Phoenix side's the exact same thing, only less owned than Miami. 13% total, 5% to Booker is the high mark on DraftKings, 6 to Nurk on FanDuel. I have a little bit more here. I have 5% of Booker and 5% of Nurk, but I am anticipating not really having anything from Miami and Phoenix.
Yeah, I got 4% of Nurkic. I think he's a price point pivot for the value guys. We talked about the Gaffords and the Batadzes, but besides that, his minutes are so low right now. Like, they don't trust him out there for enough court time. Only 23.5 minutes is the projection for him today. So that's a tough part. It's like, I don't know, you're earning a ton more, but Nurkic, that's basically it for me on this team.
I've said this before, and I'll say it again here. Like, my expectation is that this is a late swap game, and I probably end up with a little bit more of this as the slate goes on. And now we finish it off with 2 quick FanDuel games. Philly and the Clippers, 1.5-point dogs. That's the Sixers. 215 total is the low total on the slate. 17% ownership. Whoops, wrong game. No ownership coming into anybody here on FanDuel. 7% to Paul George is the high mark for Philly. 8% to Zubats is the high mark for the Clippers. Do you like anything in this game?
Not on the Philly side. I don't see much. Paul George, I think, is okay projection wise, but really feels like he's kind of really chopping up the seam, chopping up the usage enough where it's hard to want Maxey, hard to want Drummond with him just kind of being not the same Drummond this year either. Oubre as well becomes kind of worthless. These guys are still priced for pre-Paul George life, so I don't like it that much. Clippers side, you can talk me into Harden again. Harden's work's been good. Zubac on FanDuel, not sure I want to go over Jokic, who I think is the best play on the slate. But Zubac, not the price tag of the value guys, not the price tag of the expensive guys, so I think he's okay. But Harden, I think, is like old Harden right now in terms of the usage, in terms of the rebound, the assist stuff. 43% assist rate on the year, 30% usage, 1.4 fantasy points per minute. He's a beast right now until Kawhi comes back in. So I think he's a good play no matter where you're playing.
Yeah, wouldn't mind any shares of Harden. Little pricey though. I think Zubats looks like the best guy, but there is so much center availability today that it's kind of muting everybody. And the idea of getting all the way up to Jokic is incredibly appealing because if he just has a day, it won't matter what else you have at center because he can just hang a number that is basically unable to be caught by most of the league. That's really it, though. I mean, none of these guys are really grading out all that well. There's a reason they're pulling no ownership whatsoever. The final game is a very different game than the one we just talked about. The total is 22 points higher. Toronto is an 11-point dog in Sacramento, 237 total. This is the second highest total on the 12-gamer. Not really any ownership, though, coming into Toronto. 6% to Grady Dick is the high mark. It's pretty muted on Sacramento. Sabonis snuck up to 12. He has that power forward eligibility, which I think is basically just handling all of that ownership. And then it's like, around 5% for Murray, DeRozan, and Fox. So what would you want to get to here? I'm a little intrigued by Jakob Poeltl, but at 7,500 and unowned, that is quite the pay up to be contrarian option.
Yeah, he and I think Zubac kind of the same thing. We're on a full slate. It's just a little too many options there, but I think Poeltl projects well. He would project kind of similar to me to Zubac. So I think if you're putting in 150 or something, like getting a little bit of those guys wouldn't be crazy. Barrett, I'm still in on. He's been a monster so far this year. Obviously, with not having Quickly out there, not having Barnes for basically all the court time, Barrett's been out there, but he's at 33% usage, 38% assist rate, 1.34 fantasy points per minute so far this year. And this kind of matchup against Sacramento, where it is a pace-up spot, total's really high. I think Barrett looks like a really strong play, even paying up a little bit more on FanDuel. DK late slate, though, also looks good. Team Barrett, Grady Dick, probably not chasing him as much, but I think he's shooting well, 60% true shooting on the year, so he's kind of becoming the best version of himself. So I wouldn't mind him as chalk, but Barrett to me is the better play.
To me, Sabonis is pretty clearly the best guy you can get in this game. He was 17% optimal for me on FanDuel. The fact that you can play him at power forward is just massive, especially for a guy that will never play a single second at power forward. So there's also that. It's going to be a fun slate, man. We've reached the top of the hour.
Survived. It's a lot of games. Stressful day.
We did survive. Live Before Lock is going to be coming up next. 77 more likes to go until we get to 500. Show the Live Before Lock guys some love. Hit that thumbs up. Get it up to 500 so when they get in here, they can give you the best of their abilities. Spags, tell the people where to find you.
Follow me at Chris Spags. And of course, before this stream every day, 4 p.m. Eastern time, I do a stream on the @SplashPlay NBA channel. So check it out. Brand new channel. I'm excited to launch that, talking about this stuff, talking about the slate, talking about pick'ems. So please check that out. And thank you for watching. Thank you for Josh. Thank you for Josh being Josh.
That I could not agree with anymore. I'm going to leave it on that note. Stay here. Live Before Lock is next.
I'll allow it. Take your all pass with you, though. Can't have two people at the same time. I don't know what you're up to in there.
Oh my God, please stop.
What is happening, everybody? It is time for an NBA Live Before Lock, where, Eric, I assume we're going to be getting news over the course of this show here, because we've got a lot of players here on the NBA Injury Report. I'm going to give everybody the rundown of all the players who are currently questionable, and there's some biggies. So not only are you guys going to want to watch this show, you're probably going to want to check out the playback show with Josh and I after this one. One piece of news that we're for sure going to be getting during this show, LaMelo Ball, he's questionable. He plays in the very first game that locks on the entire slate in a game against the Detroit Pistons. So LaMelo is questionable. Anthony Davis is questionable. Zion Williamson is questionable. Zach LaVine is questionable. Jose Alvarado is questionable. Rui Hachimura is questionable. Brendan Pajemski is questionable. Jordan Hawkins is questionable. Tari Eason is questionable. Andrew Nembhard is questionable. Karis LeVert is questionable. Dylan Brooks is questionable. And we just got campaign out. So that one didn't matter, but we already have that one. Of course, we get the one that doesn't really matter at all. So that is all of the news that we're going to be looking out for, not only during the course of this show, but then also during the playback show when Josh and I are sitting there waiting for news, updating our lineups, watching some of the games. So check that out right after this. If you haven't done it already, do us a favor, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and Eric is rifling through his desk in there. What is it that you're looking inside of your desk, Eric? You seem distraught.
No, it's okay. Just trying to get all of the stuff put away and put together, and whatever. There's a lot of basketball games going on today. I'm going to be on TV later tonight. I've got multiple things and videos to do this evening. There's just so much to do, so little time, but I'm stoked about this slate. I'm playing DraftKings only tonight, but I think there is a lot of edge waiting for us, and I really, 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 really don't want Pelicans news until way later.
So right away, I have to ask you, what is that edge you're referring to? Is it just waiting for the Pelicans news? Is it something else you have on your mind? Is it the Anthony Davis situation? Where is it that you think that there is the most value to be had?
Yeah, the Pelicans with some super cheap value. I mean, obviously, Anthony Davis, if he ends up sitting, LeBron James will become interesting. We'll probably talk about all of the different starting iterations of how that could look. God forbid we walk into chalk Jackson Hayes, but I suppose that's a thing that could happen. But this is just a slate with tons of value. But there's one piece of value that I think is pretty thin on it. And I think that gives me an opportunity to get away from that specific piece. I did bet something of his, this thin player, as is as well, because OKC doesn't exactly go out of their way to try to rebound very much. But that being said, I'm a big fan of getting away from Peyton Watson if I can, and trying to get to as many of these cheap filler pieces, specifically Brandon Boston, who has multi-positional eligibility, shooting guard, small forward. If you get Hawkins out, if you get a number of these other guys, we saw Javonte Green play kind of a minimized role there. We saw Brandon Boston play a lot, and we saw my old pal Jalen Noel from the Minnesota Timberwolves once upon a time. He's now wearing a Pelicans jersey at a flat 3K. These are guys I want zero of if those guys end up in, but I think they're the best pieces of value if you get news popping after 7 p.m. Eastern time that Zion's out, that Jordan Hawkins is out, that Jose Alvarado's out. I mean, this could end up being incredible. And I know it's Cleveland on the other side, and there's lots of chances it fails, but not at 3K. And then with the positional eligibility of Brandon Boston, I mean, there's that. Ayo Dosunmu could be back in our lives. That worked out. I was bitching and complaining about Kobe White and him the other night. And then I almost won everything, which would have been really fun. But I had an awesome slate last time. I'm ready to rock tonight. Feeling pretty confident about it.
Yeah, so just really quick, something that you hit on there. And actually, one of the reasons I like Peyton Watson actually has nothing to do with Peyton Watson himself. It has to do with the start time that Peyton Watson's in, where if you have lineups with Peyton Watson in them, because his game starts at 9 p.m. Eastern time, so that is the final game of locks for the DraftKings slate. If other value opens up over the course of the night, you could turn Peyton Watson into those pieces. So I don't want to go and change anything about, because I am getting to a lot of Peyton Watson right now. I don't want to change anything about that. I want to keep him in lineups and then be able to change some of him to other value pieces that might open up. Maybe it's a Jackson Hayes if Anthony Davis is ruled out. And I mean, it looked like Rui Hachimura wasn't going to play earlier today either, but now he's questionable. So I guess there's a chance he ends up playing. But let's say there's an event that Anthony Davis and Rui Hachimura both sit. You mentioned LeBron looks like a better pay-up option. You talked about Jackson Hayes. Well, I'd want to be getting to Jackson Hayes, and it would be a little bit easier if I already had Peyton Watson at a similar price point in some of those lineups. So Really, if Peyton Watson was locking at 7 p.m. Eastern time, I would feel different about it. But with him at 9 p.m., I like him at least as a reserve spot in lineups.
That's what he is for me too. I'm not saying don't put him in your lineups. Very different things. But what I'm saying is I think he's a very thin piece of chalk that there's a lot of things that I would prefer to turn him into, but we still are in an industry, and obviously we have 2.6K people watching, which first off is awesome. Smash the like button. We appreciate you. People talk about DFS being dwindling, and what it is not. It is back bigger than ever. It's been awesome. Some of these slates that we've had for DraftKings, FanDuel, how many contests have been filling early, and we saw it in NHL yesterday too, how much demand there is for DFS. But I still think we're in a little bit of a bubble, even with 2.6K people hanging out watching this show, because we're seeing constantly if there's late news. The IO news, I thought he was going to be in like 60% of lineups, still 50% of lineups because there was plenty of time. He ended up like 30%, 35% owned in the main DK stuff. And it was just unbelievable that a $4,500 IO was that cheap and was going to be starting. Well, we got the confirmed start with Zach LaVine out, and now he's 4,400. I mean, it's just an unbelievable situation if you're by your computer, if you're willing to make swaps, because people see what the chalk is earlier in the day. They build their lineups and they don't change them. They just don't change them. So use the late swap tool here at Stokastic. Make sure you're paying attention to news and checking out playback with Josh and Greg after the show. But like, God, I love this slate.
LaMelo Ball available to play. So we got that news right out of the gate. Yeah. I didn't know what to make of LaMelo, but we just found out Cody Martin, he's available to play. LaMelo, he's available to play. Instant reaction to those guys both being ruled in. Obviously, LaMelo being infinitely more important.
Yeah, Detroit's not the best matchup. There's only really one piece that I want to get to on the Detroit side of things. I'm assuming that, if you wanted to get to a share out of 150 of like a Grant Williams or a Taj Gibson, like I'm not going to say completely no to it, because you could see one of them play like 28, 30 minutes. Like the line share of minutes, Grant Williams can slide over to the 4 alongside him. I think that that's something that they could do. Minnesota ran him out of the gym. Naz Reid made every 3. I watched that whole game, and Charlotte never really even got a chance to go small the way they might have wanted to. But I think this just makes it easier. We don't have to talk about Trey Mann. We don't have to talk about what we think the minutes are going to be for Brandon Miller. He just won't be in for me. We don't have to talk about potential of Josh Green being a thing where he could be eating up more usage with Cody Martin out. And of course, we don't have to deal with as much Miles Bridges, whose usage has been way down, because it's not just LaMelo Ball playing every day. Trey Mann is starting to take on usage in that second unit and making it harder for him to realize the ceiling.
So let's talk about this now that we've got news out of the way for the first couple games on the slate, because unless I'm wrong here, we now have the status of everybody for the first 2 games. Let me just double check to make sure that's correct. Looking at the injury reports, and yeah, so LaMelo in. Oh, we still need the Nembhard news, so not quite. So, but at least talking about the Detroit-Charlotte game, and then we'll figure out what to do with Nembhard as that news comes out, and I guess we could loop Orlando into this because we know the Orlando situation. Leaving Indiana out of the equation, between Detroit, Charlotte, Orlando, which player, Pajemski just ruled out. We can talk about that after this.
Okay.
Between Detroit, Charlotte, and Orlando, who are the players that you are willing to have exposure to, even though we have potential value opening up later?
All right. Are we putting Indiana in that as well?
We'll leave Indiana out for now, just because, like with Nembhard questionable, I could still move stuff around.
Okay. Well, then that's fair. I think Franz Wagner is a very, very viable tournament play. I think Cade Cunningham has the ceiling at 8,500, getting to go up against Charlotte. I'm not going to omit them. And then Jalen Suggs, of course. They haven't been playing a lot of competitive games, but even in games that haven't been that competitive, OKC, Dallas, Cleveland, that game was way worse than the 11-point finish that it had, because you had Tristan da Silva go nuts in the last 2 minutes and make me feel like crap for not following through at like 0.6% ownership or whatever. But Jalen Suggs, absolutely want him in the fold. So those 3 right off the top of my head, Cunningham, Wagner, Suggs. It's pretty much spend ups though. And then, my favorite guy, the guy that I have the most of, Jalen Duren. I have in nearly 20% of lineups right now. That could change based on what happens. Maybe we get AD news, but like, who the flying F is going to board against Jalen Duren? I've been talking about it since Lindy's last night, where it's just like, you have a 6'9", 39-year-old Taj Gibson and a 6'7" Grant Williams, who's a below average rebounder in the NBA, and they could be playing the consolidated minutes at the 5. Duren is a man. Like, this dude is going to go out there. I mean, we saw 17, 14 boards against Brooklyn and the Lakers, respectively. This is going to look a lot more like that Brooklyn spot where they didn't have Simmons on the floor. They didn't have a lot of minutes for Nicholas Claxton, and they played Duren a little bit more. If Jalen Duren is getting after it early in this game, you could see them just keep him out on the floor rather than try to go to, beef stew as some small ball type lineups. I'm sure Charlotte will try to go small to get him off the floor with Grant Williams in some spots, but if he's not knocking down shots, there is a gigantic ceiling for Duren where those minutes, if they get north of 30, you're talking about tournament winning upside at 5,900.
Yeah, there's a big upside. It's so hard to know what to do with his minutes because they just haven't always been there. Sometimes it's Isaiah Stewart playing over him. You mentioned that they go small at times. The players who are most important to me from the first couple games, was like, by the way, Andrew Nembhard just ruled in. So kind of convenient because we were just talking about the Pacers not knowing the situation. We now know that he is going to be in. Goga Bitadze, really difficult for me to get away from in that first couple of games. Goga's a good fantasy producer, and Orlando is so thin at the front. Remember last year how good Bitadze was from a real life perspective for the first couple months of the year, and then the team got healthy and he just fell by the wayside. But now he's kind of forced to play the only big men that the Magic have available right now. You got Bitadze, you got Mo Wagner, you got Jonathan Isaac, and they don't even really like playing Isaac center minutes. So it's like Bitadze and Mo Wagner probably going to be splitting the center minutes there with a couple minutes going to other guys. So Bitadze, just based on his price point, is somebody who I want to be getting exposure to. Jalen Suggs, totally agree with you there. And the other one as well is Jaden Ivey, just because he's still relatively cheap. He's taking a bunch of shots. His playing time's way more secure this year as well. It was an issue with Detroit at the start of last year where they just didn't really know what to do with Jaden Ivey. And Monty Williams, I think he had said last year, the player suggested to him, why don't we try playing Jaden Ivey at point guard? And then Monty Williams like, oh, that's a good idea. What happens? They play Jaden Ivey some point guard minutes. He starts taking out, and Monty Williams goes to the press conference like, hey, if it wasn't for the players, I never would have thought of it, which seemed insane at the time.
Yeah,
and
that's why he's not there.
But yeah, so those are the guys who have been more than 10% of lineups from the first couple games, Eric. Suggs, Ivy, and Bitadze.
So Ivy, I get. I will say this, though. He's 6,100, and he takes away potential for Chicago Bulls pieces to fall into lineups. I think that's the thing that really makes it hard for me to call him a, quote, priority. He's also already pulling some ownership where I know on this specific slate, if you pre-bake some Chicago up against Dallas, which, on the interior could look a little bit different. If they get Lively out, PJ Washington's out too. I think, with Patrick Williams, he's probable for this one. I think at 5K, I think there's even a chance I might land on some of him, which is gross. But Najee Marshall is going to be mega chalk. Yeah. We have Peyton Watson. We could probably slide enough around there where I don't want to get to too much Jaden Ivey. I'm just kind of rerunning my rates with him to see if I kind of missed anything. The part that sucks for him is everybody that they threw in the offseason here, Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr. in the starting unit, they're just going to take away usage compared to Ron Holland did, Simone Fontecchio did, some of these other guys that, Fontecchio's out there to shoot, but he sits in the corner idle by and waits for the ball to come to him. The usage is going to be up for those guys, and I think it's probably going to cap Jaden Ivey to a certain extent, but still 6,100. I see why you're getting to a little bit against Charlotte.
Yeah, and once again, it's not like these are my most rostered players. It's just these are the guys from the first two games on the slate that have more than 10% of. Totally. It was Goga, it was Suggs, and it was Ivy. But yeah, not like these are guys who are in Najee Marshall amounts of lineups or anything like that. And there's a super chat here related to Najee Marshall. Jordan, were these super chats any of them answered last show, or are they all there here for us right now?
My guess is no. Let's just assume no.
Okay.
Well, it was nice.
So so Brad Kaufman asked Josh, how do I move my lineups from Sims to DK to put my lineups in for tonight? So there's a video up on the YouTube channel, Brad, that I think will help you that Joshua made, how to use the entry manager. Oh, cool. Am I crazy, Eric, or did you just say these didn't get answered?
He just said that they got answered.
I thought he said they didn't. All right.
No, he just said the opposite of what you just said. I thought he said
they only answered price productions.
So it's okay. It's nice when I get to tell you, open up your fucking ears, Greg. It's nice. I like to yell at you.
It's my bad. I have clearly fucked up. I'm in the wrong on this.
Good.
I should be punished.
Good. I will.
Booth Bruce Booth says, is there any way you could use the Sims to have more spots for Pelicans news? And is there a video on how to use late swap? All right. I was just going to YouTube to find Josh's video, but guess what? I have a video on how to use late swap. So I'm going to send that into the...
We've gotten a lot of super chats about those the last couple of days. How I handle it is a little bit different, where I go in and I kind of have my pre-made projections. Again, what's nice is that you can change the fantasy point per minute rate. You can kind of do exactly... I basically just have a query that I save for each team based on the news over on Add More Funds. And then I can export that data. It's super easy to do. Put it in a sheet. You're able to pull it out. But if you don't want to go through like the labor intensive version of it, you can simply go and change their projection on the projection screen when you get to it in the Sims, add like 4 or 5 to certain guys, and you will get them pre-baked into lineups. Then when the news drops, you can go into the late swap tool after the fact. Zion, Hawkins, Alvarado, game time decisions. That doesn't mean anything. We're still waiting.
And Anthony Davis, by the way.
And Anthony Davis. Cool. Okay. Just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything there because that's huge in what we're talking about here. I changed the projections for those guys individually based on what my rates are, but you could just add 4 or 5 to each one of them, pre-bake them into lineups, get them there already before you even jump in, change their ownership a little bit. I've talked about increasing that too, because it's not going to be nothing. People are going to do the same thing Greg, myself, everybody else are doing who have done this for a while, but I am very much behind doing it in the projection spot. So I get those lineups. Otherwise, you're simming 5,000 lineups and you're only going to like a small portion of them because it's not like I'm going to get any Jalen Noel or any Brandon Boston right now with those guys in the projections.
All right, this is not my fault. People are telling me that the super chat that we just did was also answered on the last show, but the price per I thought all right. I'm clearly an idiot. I'm not understanding something. I thought we'd only answered up to price productions. All right, cool. Chris Williams gifted us. If this one was already answered, okay, my bad. But Chris Williams gifted out 5 YouTube memberships. Chris, we appreciate you. That usually comes in at the start of the show here. So I think that Chris had left it at the top. If not, I will get yelled at again. Jordan, 1,000 lashings me after. Okay, cool. I don't trust Josh either. Chris, thank you very much. We appreciate you. And for everybody else, if you want to support us, simply like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Einsteinium in the Discord chat says, do we think that Grimes and Marshall are negatively correlated, Eric?
Do I think Najee and who are negatively correlated?
Quentin Grimes.
Yeah, but I don't care. I mean, if you want to get to Quentin Grimes, you're doing something very, very different from the rest of the field. You're just saying Najee isn't going to get to those number of minutes. They're not negatively correlated, I wouldn't think. Sure, the usage. The only thing that's shared in basketball is the assist to a bucket. Everything else is individualized to some extent, so keep that in mind. But I would make no changes. If you wanted to get to Quentin Grimes as is, have fun. I strongly prefer Jalen Noel if we get all of those Pelicans out. But God, I mean, whatever. Quentin Grimes, that's way too thin today.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's negative correlation in terms of the more minutes Najee Marshall plays, the less minutes we would expect Quentin Grimes to play. I don't know about you, but I'm not getting Grimes in lineups as of right now. It's subject to change if the starting lineup is different than expected, or if more players, end up getting ruled out or things along those lines. But yeah, as of right now, I'm getting to a ton of Najee Marshall is actually in all of my lineups and none of Quentin Grimes.
Yeah, I have 100% of him too.
Which is something else that I think that we should talk about here right at the top. Najee Marshall, assuming he starts, he's going to be in all my lineups. Seems same for yourself as well. I know he's going to be crazy popular, but I mean, it's something that we've seen too. It's really hard to project some of these situations. Like the other day, Bobby Portis projected to be mega chalk. Was he chalky? Absolutely. But he still came in 20% less than what his ownership projection was. We've seen it with some other really chalk pieces early. You mentioned Ayo Dosunmu at the top of the show. So even though Najee Marshall is going to be really popular, I'm skeptical that he's going to be as popular as his ownership projection is. I'll just load up on him and basically hope that he scores at least 20 fantasy points. And then I'm trying to build the nuts with one less player.
There you go. Same.
Is there anybody who you view as being even comparable to Najee Marshall as a value option today?
No, I do not. Najee in for 29 fantasy points. We have him for 28 and change. I mean, he's He's in 100% of lineups. I will say this. If I have lineups that I need to be making pivots to get away for whatever reason, I could see a world where I do it, because if Najee puts up 22, 23, he's probably not going to kill you. But like right now, I just have 100%. And I'd be just fine if I got to that game, not knowing anything else as the slate is progressing, depending on news, whatever else. I'd be just fine landing on 100% of him under just about any circumstances.
Westbrook is kind of comparable to me as a points per dollar option, a little bit more expensive, but I don't know what happened with DraftKings pricing where they're like, hey, Russell Westbrook, like maybe they'll price him up when Jamal Murray comes back at this point, but Jamal Murray's been out. This is going to be Westbrook's, third game without Jamal Murray now. The fact that he's still only $5K on DraftKings, he's a little bit more expensive on FanDuel, but still not properly priced there either. But you've got him at $5K on DraftKings. That's egregious. $6,400 on FanDuel is also kind of crazy mispriced for Russell Westbrook. Who, is he good from a real life perspective at this point in his career? No, absolutely not. But he's still a competent fantasy producer who's locked into playing big minutes as long as nothing goes crazy for today. So Russell Westbrook, not quite as good as Najee Marshall, but he's another piece of chalk that I find it really hard to get away from, Eric.
I get it. 5K. However, it is a lineup spot, and I'm looking through iterations of what happens with the Pelicans and Anthony Davis. There are a lot of ways that I want to pay up for LeBron James, Jokic, and Doncic just as raw points per dollar, or not raw fantasy points guys, not point per dollar, and then just playing all the cheapies around him, and he kind of gets pulled to the wayside because he won't project for like 40 plus at a guard position. So I get it. I think he looks good, but I am far more willing to part with a guard, especially a point guard only, where you're, fitting into 3 spots, as opposed to a small forward, power forward who has, the second best potential utility you could possibly have, or multi-positional eligibility that you could have.
Got a super chat here from Jake Lindland. He wants to know, do we think AD plays? And then he's nervous to lock Ivy. I'm not locking an Ivy. I'm just playing him in some lineups. I'm not locking Ivy at all. He's just one of the guys that I'm willing to play from the first couple games on the slate. As far as AD, earlier in the day, I did not think Anthony Davis was going to play. As the day's gone on, I do think he's going to play, but I'm now really concerned for the long-term health of Anthony Davis for this season, because they said that this heel injury that he has, he's been dealing with it since before the Olympics. It was an issue towards the tail end of last season. We know the injury history of AD as well. I know that he was somebody who was super healthy over the course of the last season, played 75 games. It was the first time he had played 65 plus in something like 8 years, or like 2 out of 8 years, or something crazy like that. And now you got him just the second week of the season dealing with an injury that he's had since the summer. That's a red flag to me. Definitely something that raises caution flags. So I'm really not totally sure if he's going to be in or out. But my best guess is that Anthony Davis plays, considering he was at shoot around earlier. But for yourself, Eric, what's your best guess on AD?
Not as concerned as you are. I mean, if he ends up out, obviously I'll have 0 and you're going to pivot off of him. So there's nothing you can do about it right now, but I think he's more likely to play. He played 39 minutes 2 games ago. So talk whatever you want about this issue, about the ankle, whatever else. I still think if he plays, he's going to look awesome. I mean, it didn't slow him down. He's put up 38, 11, 2, 37, 9, and 4 his last 2 out. Played 36, 39 minutes, got smoked there against Detroit, which was kind of sad and weird, but I am probably thinking he plays. So I'm not doing much about that. If he ends up out, I'm going to be really, really torn about what I'm supposed to do with the Lakers. Because like Jackson Hayes, I assume starts, but like Koloko has the power forward eligibility, and having to even think about him on this slate seems disingenuous, but like we will definitely have to think about him.
Yeah, if you go and look at the Lakers depth chart, and here's why Jackson Hayes is somebody who I would just have to assume becomes a stronger option if AD is out. Here are the big men, and also Rui Hachimura, doubtful early in the day, since been upgraded to questionable, but let's say that AD and Rui Hachimura both sit. You've already got Vanderbilt out for the Lakers. Christian Wood's already out for the Lakers. They just sent a bunch of guys to the G League. So now it's like, who are the big men that are available? It's Jackson Hayes. I guess they could play small lineups with LeBron at center. Christian Koloko, it seems he's going to be in the rotation as soon as today. That was something we saw reported about the Lakers, is that they want to start giving Christian Koloko a run. There's literally no other big men on the roster now.
Yep. They don't have a choice. They would just have to play him. Like, and Koloko and Jackson Hayes would become two guys that you just have to play in lineups, and it sucks because neither of them are good.
Yeah, but if there's minutes and these guys are both cheap,
Yep.
and they should be cheap because they're no good, they haven't played all season. I mean,
Yep.
you give any big man 20, mid 20s minutes at a really cheap price tag, and they're going to project pretty well on a points per dollar basis and show up in lineups. A couple questions from our Discord channel. This one is from Hey I'm Drew 95, who is asking his usual question. He wants to know, who are the DK cash game plays so far? And he did say that he knows that there's a lot that could change over the course of the night, but just wants to know that given what we know as of right now, who are the players he should be playing in cash games at this minute? All right.
It's
Najee Marshall, easy.
Yes.
Russell Westbrook, easy. Non-negotiables.
Yes.
I would say for now,
Peyton
Watson as well. Probably going to be in your cash game lineup anyway. But if you get Peyton Watson and other players get ruled out, kind of like we were talking about for GPPs, you got him in there. You can pivot it to other guys. All right. So we've got those as just surefire cash game plays. I would say, considering the amount of cheap options that we've already talked about, we are going to want to spend some salary. I'm going to put LeBron as one of them. I like the positionality at small forward, power forward. And if Anthony Davis is out, then you are definitely going to want LeBron in your cash game lineup. If there's a scenario that Anthony Davis doesn't play, you just have to have LeBron. So it's easier to have him in now than out. And then also, if you do get into a scenario where Anthony Davis plays, it's not the end of the world that LeBron is in. So LeBron is a pay-up option, particularly just because if we're looking at, some of the other spots where there's value that we've already talked about, where that value generally is harder to find is at that small forward, power forward spot. And LeBron 9K on DraftKings, somebody would want to put in there. But so those four for me. Anything else you would add?
Yeah, I think this is the perfect example of a cash game that you should be playing lots of pieces from Chicago, Dallas, OKC, Denver, just as placeholders and react to news as it comes out. Because I can't predict where it's going to go. But I know that those games start, you've got Chicago, Dallas on an island at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time and Denver, OKC at 9 p.m. Eastern time. I would be playing Gafford, Luka, Najee Marshall from Denver. I would be playing, from Dallas, Gafford, Doncic, Najee Marshall from Dallas. I would be playing Peyton Watson from Denver. You could look at playing Jokic to potentially just have the Luka Jokic and then just fill in value here. And then Russell Westbrook, I think at Denver, a guy that you just are absolutely putting in there too. So I think it's like 5 or 6 spots that you could fill up now, just backloading it and then react to news as things come out. Because I would want Io if they end up starting against Dallas. I would want to get to just as many pieces of the Pelicans as I could that would fit into lineups. So yeah, backload it with those 2 games.
Next question that we have in the Discord channel, it is from Ryan Schindler. Ryan wants to know, are we getting lineups with Luka and Jokic, or is that cutting it too thin for the rest of the lineup? I'll have to check. Let me see. I'll sort in the Sims. I have about 20% of each of them, so maybe a couple of lineups, but I don't have insane amounts of either player for the slate. Let's see. I'll do a filter here. Okay, so lineups filtered contains Jokic and Doncic. And I have right now, I have 2 lineups that have both of them right now. So it's possible, but it's not a priority for me. For yourself, Eric?
No.
There we have it. Yeah, couple, nothing really all that significant. We got some starting lineups that just came in for the early games. Nothing surprising. Cunningham, Ivy, Hardaway, Harris, Duren for the Pistons, and then Ball, Miller, Green, Bridges, Taj Gibson for the Charlotte Hornets. Next question that we have in Discord, it is from JEW. He says he just got here. He wants to know, who are must plays of the early games for DK single entry? Nobody. For a GPP, if you're just playing one lineup, a single entry, there's nobody that I think you need to have from the first couple games.
Yeah, Duren's my highest owned currently. My last round, he was in 16% of lineups, so he's come down a little bit here. Then I don't have anybody else above 10%. I'm just playing 50 lineups today in that main tournament and moving on with my life. But yeah, I don't see any reason whatsoever to say there's anybody that you need to prioritize. You should just be backloading and ready to rock.
Next question. It is from Rabashua. He says that he likes Mitchell as a pivot off of Brunson and he likes Garland as a pivot off of Russell Westbrook on FanDuel. but doesn't want both Garland and Mitchell together. He wants to know, how would he pull that off in The Sims? Yeah, so if you go into the lineup filters, see where it says filter, then change the columns to lineups, and then put in Garland and Mitchell, and then just unselect the lineups that have both of them. And that's going to be the easiest way to remove any lineups that have both those players. That's something I do for some situations, or maybe like I use this example just because it's less relevant this year, but it was relevant a lot last year, where there'd be games where it'd be like Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu would both be projected for 24 minutes, and they'd be a good matchup against the Wizards, and they would both be projected pretty good on a points per dollar basis. But if you remember, there was points on last year where they would never, ever play minutes together. And the way that I would often do it is if I was getting to a good amount of exposure to both of them, that's exactly what I would do. I make the lineup filter, find lineups with Capella and Okongwu, and I would just remove them. Eric, you seem pained. What happened?
Anthony Davis is out.
There we go. All right. Anthony Davis ruled out with the heel injury. So let's go. We were just talking about it before. LeBron James, best pay up option on the slate, must play in cash games now, correct?
Must play in cash game. You're probably playing Jackson Hayes if he starts in cash games. I would rather play him than Neemias Queta.
Hachimura also out.
Yeah. Well, we thought he was going to be out. He got like the late downgrade, and yeah, that's never good.
No, he was a late upgrade.
Oh, he was a late upgrade? I thought he was downgraded.
No,
he was doubtful, and then
upgraded,
upgraded, and now he's out. So yeah, no, everything has changed within me. Something is not the same. I think that's going to be Wicked coming out here soon. But yeah, it's going to be really, really brutal because, well, you want to play some Lakers, and it's not going to be a lot of fun. Goddamn. All right, here we go.
All right, so let's start talking about the Lakers here. And I mean, some of this is pretty simple because in a lot of ways, it's the same team as last year. So there's certain things that we just know to kind of be true, right? Like LeBron, going to look better. Austin Reeves, going to look better. D'Lo, also going to look better. What I do think that there could be a little bit of wiggle room with is going to be some of the other ancillary pieces. Like, what do we make of Dalton Connect? What do we make of somebody like Gabe Vincent? Could he get more minutes? And then also, what do they end up doing with the starting lineup? I think Jackson Hayes is going to start, and under that assumption, he's going to be a really good value option. But Eric, what's your overall takeaways from players on the Lakers outside of LeBron James?
So my big thing with the LeBron being like mega chalk is, I know we got up to 40 minutes against Detroit. They did have the day off in between here. They don't play tomorrow. Let me double check that here because I know there's only 3 games tomorrow. Yeah, Lakers aren't on the slate tomorrow, so they have till Friday. Maybe they can push his minutes a little bit more here. But I mean, if this game gets wonky in any way, shape, or form, it's going to be like pure punt central, which is definitely live to happen. I suppose Memphis, not crazy difficult on the other side with Desmond Bane and Marcus Smart out. But I look at the Lakers front court. That's the first thing that's very, very obvious, where Jackson Hayes, if he starts 4,100, looks decent. Christian Coloco, once again, this is a guy that I didn't want to think about a ton today. He doesn't have power forward eligibility over on DK, which is just kind of yucky, but 3,500 for him. He's not on the injury report. He had a blood clot last year, and it was a whole issue with him. But this is like potentially his first game that he could play. I worry about what those minutes could be. So like we could walk into like 30, 32 minutes for him. And then Maxwell Lewis was with the G League here. I want to see if he's even here because this is something that is actually going to matter as I'm piecing together the minutes for these guys. Max Christie probably becomes interesting. Cam Reddish to some extent.
Maxwell Lewis is in the G League, by the way.
Okay, thank you. Maxwell Lewis, G League. I just got Basketball Monster up here so I can look at this. Jalen Hood, Shafino. Okay, so Christian Coloco will play back in minutes. Jackson Hayes, barring foul trouble, will be out there. Zach Edey should have a lot of fun. There's no doubt about it. Jay Huff's a 7'1" guy, but mainly goes out to the perimeter, shoots threes. And Zach Edey should be in a smash type spot if Jackson Hayes gets in foul trouble, which is very, very live to happen in a spot like this. I think LeBron at the 5 is like a legitimate thing. Like I think that's like what we have to. I'm actually just going to be carving out some minutes for him at the 5 here, just because I don't want to go crazy. I mean, under a perfect assumption, I'd put like 30 minutes in for Jackson Hayes, 18 for Coloco, but I don't know if Coloco can play 18. And so I'm just going to carve out a couple, go to like 15 for Coloco. LeBron James, I think, has to play some 5 if they're going to have Edey off the floor at any point in time. Those are like obvious spots to potentially go there. Austin Reeves looks awesome. What do we think about D'Lo? Because they're going to need freaking points. And I feel like D'Lo's the guy who's going to get no attention. Here he is, 5,600. Without Anthony Davis on the floor, there should be opportunities in like games like this for D'Lo to go out and just chuck. And I'm worried that this is one of them. And LeBron James doesn't have as... I mean, LeBron's just going to get all the ownership. What do you think about D'Lo? This is the guy that I'm having a tough time wanting to like talk myself into what to make his fantasy point per minute rate.
Yeah, I'm looking at the on-off court numbers from the start of last year through this year for the Lakers, just to look at some of the points per minute production from the Lakers.
So nobody on the entire Lakers has a usage rate over 30%, including Anthony Davis when you go back to last season and you incorporate everything. But then you take Anthony Davis off the floor, and I got to take Rui now too. I mean, obviously that's somebody who has actual usage, and I think we're going to get enough of a minute sample size. I'm very, very nervous at what's going to pop up here as I'm waiting for it to quit spinning. All right, 32.8% usage for Jackson Hayes. Or no. 33.7% usage for LeBron James. Number 2 is D'Angelo Russell, 25%. 24.8% usage. Good Lord Almighty. Austin Reeves, 22.5%.
So a couple things, just like fantasy points that stand out to me. D'Lo, to your point before, 1.12 DraftKings points per minute with AD and Hachimura both off the court, and we're probably getting mid-30s minutes from D'Angelo Russell. He's going to project extremely well under those considerations. So I think D'Lo looks really good. Austin Reeves, on the other hand, not quite the same sort of production I was expecting. Now, part of this too is he has improved a good amount from the start of last year, where if you remember last year, Austin Reeves really wasn't playing well for the Lakers at all. And they had to move him to a bench role. They limited his minutes for a little bit. So the sample size of 236 minutes here, it could potentially be a little bit misleading, but he's only 0.96 fantasy points per minute on DraftKings, 0.93 on FanDuel per minute with Anthony Davis and Hachimura off the court. Just like logically, that doesn't really make sense to me. I think that should be higher. But yeah, the numbers for D'Lo really do pop off the page.
Nathan's saying, well, what if Zach Edey gets in foul trouble? Well, then they have Jaren Jackson Jr. He's pretty good and can play the 5 under any circumstances in these. And Jaren Jackson Jr. is the guy we've generally ran into foul trouble with. His minutes got up to 32 last time. He's 7K with power forward eligibility. There's a case to be made for like him being a guy who could go up and smash if they want to go to that iteration of the lineup. But like, I don't think the Lakers have any choice but to play. Like they don't really have a choice. Like it would be LeBron James at the 5. Like that's how you would have to look at it if they're not going to have Koloko and Hayes on the floor.
We got some super chats that came in. We got some questions as well from Discord. So let's answer the Discord questions here first. Sniffs1234 says, what do we do about Steph Curry with Podziemski out? I don't know what to make of the minutes for anybody on the Warriors. They're playing everybody on, and also the Warriors are awesome this year. That's a really good team. But like, it's hard for me to prioritize Steph Curry because I don't know that they have to play him 36 minutes, nor that they even want to. Karis LeVert will play today. Okay. So I'm just going to be looking at other stars to pay up for, and I just hope that Steph doesn't have a Steph night. But even if he goes off, like, I don't know if he plays 30 minutes today, is he really going to score like 2 fantasy points per minute and put up 60 fantasy points when he's very scoring dependent? It's all that unlikely. It's pretty unlikely to me. So I'm not going to be looking at Steph Curry. Clintwood 83 said disregard his super chat because we already answered it. Well, now I'm curious what that super chat is. Let's see.
Yeah, what did you say,
Clintwood 83 wanted help with Korg. Okay, cool. Understood there. Aiden Queskin wants to know, how much are we bumping Tatum in a revenge spot against Steve Kerr? I'm not going out of my way to roster Jason Tatum. I'd rather play LeBron for a cheaper price point.
I sure would too.
Yeah. Like, I'm sure I'll get to some of Tatum just because there is a lot of value on the slate, but it's just hard to prioritize him. The Celtics are really good. Even without Kristaps Porzingis and Jaylen Brown, even without those 2 players, the Celtics might be the best team in the league. That's how ridiculous this team is.
Very dumb.
Peyton Pritchard's all of a sudden become one of the best, maybe the best bench player in the league. That's what they needed. They need another guy to become really good.
Yeah.
Scott Yamano wants to know, is Franz Wagner a priority on FanDuel? He's picking up ownership, but I want the flexibility for late swap. He's playable. I'm not going to call him a priority, especially now that we have LeBron as a forward option.
Correct.
Avi Schreier. Avi wants to know, Anunoby or Murray on FanDuel. So OG Anunoby or Keegan Murray. Let's see.
It is Anunoby for me, but I don't really like either for FanDuel. I'm not playing FanDuel for what it's worth. Just made lineups.
It's Anunoby for me by pretty good amount. I actually have some exposure to Anunoby, and I have almost none of Keegan Murray. And then he says, is Morgan's playable with no Anthony Davis? Morgan's. Is that Edie spell corrected? I assume.
I'm assuming so. JJ Redick, Christian Koloko expected to see some minutes Wednesday. We are kind of aware of that. Thank you. Would you like to tell us how many? That would be great to know.
He said that earlier today as well, that Koloko was expected to play, which I think may have been, in hindsight, probably a tip-off that Anthony Davis wasn't expected to play. But yeah, Christian Koloko, he'll be in the rotation. As far as Avi's final question, I'm going to, and if I'm wrong here, Avi, just throw it into YouTube chat. I'm assuming that Morgan's is just Zach Edey got auto-corrected and that becomes Morgan's for whatever reason and dumb spell check stuff. Yes, I do think it makes Edey playable because Anthony Davis was going to play Zach Edey off the court. Edey's really, really difficult for me to figure out on a day-to-day basis because there's certain matchups like him being defended by Dorian Finney-Smith the other night where he is just going to, my bad. He was asking about Ja Morant.
How did we land there with it? Ja Morant would be more interesting on slates where I thought he could get up to 36 minutes. He's not quite there yet. He played a competitive game against Brooklyn. The other thing too, even without Bane and without Smart out there, we're starting to see Scottie Pippen play some more minutes alongside of him there. Scottie Pippen can get down and do some stuff on the offensive end. Sure, assists are nice and nifty. And Ja Morant, I would like him to get over 8.5 of them, as that is my lock for tonight. Minus 130, I think, best available number still. But I am here for Ja Morant getting up to 36, 37 minutes at 9,200. It is the Lakers on the other side. D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves haven't exactly been stopping opposing backcourts by any means, but I strongly prefer, because of how much value we have on this slate, getting up to the mega ceilings. That includes LeBron James and definitely includes Jokic, even a little bit of Wemby, and then Luka Doncic.
And we got a question from June Sosa 21. He wants to know, is Suggs or Goga playable on FanDuel? Yeah, they're definitely both playable, but once again, they're not priorities.
Correct.
Let's see. Was there another question? Yes. M Grizzly wants to know, how am I handling boost to account for the late news? So at this point, we now have so much additional options that have come up. I'm just going to do an ROI downgrade to anybody who's in the 7 p.m. games.
I probably will only have even Duran, I just reran everything. I'm getting to 0 Duran, and I've been talking about him being somebody I wanted to get to. He's just priced higher than Jackson Hayes. And you know who I have projected just about the exact same? Jackson Hayes. So Jackson Hayes at 29 fantasy points for me. And I've got Duran here at 31. I mean, we're talking a huge difference. Derek Lively officially out. We were kind of expecting that. So Daniel Gafford is going to look, as good as what we already have projected.
Yeah.
Which I don't even want to talk
what
about
his minutes are
Gafford,
going to be. Yeah. Eric and I had a text about it the other day. We're like, hey, this should be a good spot for Daniel Gafford, right? There's no Lively. We're looking at the
plus 310 double
guys for them who could potentially play. And what ends up happening, Daniel Gafford plays 7 minutes in the first half, gets benched, becomes just a total non-factor in the game. So I think he's a good GPP play. Daniel Gafford, I've really liked him earlier in the day, but now as more stuff has started to open up, he just is going to fall a little bit by the wayside just because you got guys like Jackson Hayes. You've got other guys that have opened up as well. We got one more super chat here, and then we'll do the nuke of the night. We've got Cedric left us a super chat. He wants to know, Reddish at the min on FanDuel versus Connect and Christie. Yeah, I think that Cam Reddish is going to have to play some minutes for the Lakers now too. And I know that he's not a traditional big man, but he is somebody with actual size, and that is something the Lakers are desperately lacking. The Lakers don't even have that many active bodies for today. So yeah, I think Cam Reddish is a viable GPP player.
Yeah, I'm finishing up my minutes this has been a pain in the ass. I legitimately was just praying Anthony Davis was in so I didn't have to do this. I've just been lazy AF with it all day. I think you're looking at an 8-man rotation with an outside chance. I'm just going to say, Bronny James, this might be a spot where Bronny James gets unlocked for a second half where they just say, go play a quarter and see what happens. But if they're getting their asses kicked, which is very live, that could end up happening, although it's a close spread still, even without AD there, which is weird to me. But Russell Reeves, Connect, James Hayes. I think Connect ends up starting. I think Dalton Connect probably becomes an interesting tournament play. I think they could go Cam Reddish as well at a flat 3K if he ends up starting here. I'm going to want to get to a little bit of both, probably in some capacity. I'm going to prefer Pelicans pieces, and I'm still waiting on that news here, but like, there's definitely something to be made with some of these guys fitting into more lineups than you're probably comfortable with.
All right, let's see. I'm about to rerun everything. Do we have ownership updated here? Let's check that out because I just want to see really quick what some of the Lakers guys' projected ownerships are. And yes, this is updated. Quick guess, Eric. You want to guess what we have for a projected ownership on LeBron James?
Got no idea. I'll say 30%.
83%.
Wait, what?
He is projected for a lot of ownership. It's
LeBron
not going to be
James
that
at 83%?
He's projected for a lot of ownership. It's not going to, I'm going to guess he comes in like, I don't know, 40 or 50.
This is so dumb. This is very, very stupid. Yeah, that's a lot of ownership. That's a lot of people who want to play LeBron James in a potential absolute, they get their faces stuffed in spot. I get it, but boy, oh boy, does that, I mean, that is a big number. I wasn't expecting to hear anything north of like 50%. I doubt he gets over 50%. I'd be a little surprised.
It's a lot of ownership. What do you expect that you're going to end up with of LeBron James in your
I
lineups?
don't know. All I know is I basically am cheering against these first two games because I just don't want to deal with it. I might just like hand build, like right now I'm just going to put in all lineup with Suggs, all lineup with Tyrese Halliburton, all lineup with Jalen Duren. I think I'm just going to be completely backloading now. I mean, this is just too much stuff, and we have to wait for the starting lineup there. We have to wait for Pelicans news. This is like the best day for you guys to tune into the after show, for you guys to go on playback, throw that in. I know I'm on playback here for the next 10 minutes, then I got to bolt. But it is very, very important that you stay updated on this news. That starting lineup is going to be gigantic. The New Orleans news is going to be gigantic. And if you guys aren't watching Greg and Josh, two of the best in the industry, breaking it down with real money at stake right now, you guys are just flat out doing it wrong. So get over there.
I'm not going to play at this point, I'm not going to play anybody from the first couple of games.
I'm tempted to not do it. I think it's probably positive EV to just avoid it entirely. But if you get the nuclear Cade Cunningham, wouldn't shock me. If you got the nuclear Duren, wouldn't shock me. I think I'm just going to like piece one or two of these guys in by hand right now and then move on with my life.
There's certainly potential for upside from those guys. I would just rather load my lineups with the later value options and give myself more flexibility.
I mean, for me, it's more of just like, if people had enough time, are they going to backload it enough? I'm probably with you. I probably shouldn't do it, but I don't know. I've just been on the Duren train so much, and I just went from having him be like, oh, I'm going to be overweight, I'm going to feel good about it, to having zero. That feels a little extreme, but like, Ken, man, it's projection. Jackson Hayes is at 28 fantasy points for us. I've got him at 29, and we've got 31 for Duren. How could I possibly play Duren at like 10%, 12% if we're going to get Hayes potentially underowned in any capacity? And then New Orleans. We haven't even talked about New Orleans. That could be like the most important part, is just swapping all your lineups to whatever ends up happening with them. So like, I'm with you. I'm just going to avoid it now too. I just swapped out of everything. Godspeed to us all.
Yep, I've got a sim running right now, and I'll see what ends up popping up. We're caught up on the super chats. Do you want to really quickly and don't even play the animation, Jordan? We can't spare to waste a second right now. If you guys haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you want to sign up for any of the packages at Stokastic, we do have a great way for you guys to get really, really just affordable access. And that is, if you sign up with any of our affiliate partners, there's a link for that down below in the YouTube description box. You'll see all of these different sites that we are partnered with. If you sign up at any of these sites through the link we have below, make your first deposit, and then you send a screenshot of the first bet you place on that site. We email it to our support team. That is support@stokastic.com. You get 1 free month of core access of any sport of your choosing. If you want to do NBA, cool. If you want to do NFL, cool. If you also want to do like sign up at 6 of these sites, you can get 6 months of NBA core by doing that. So if you are looking for a good way to get access to our tools, check out that link down below. And there's instructions in there for the different steps to follow as well, so you don't have to remember it all. But really quick, Eric, and once again, Jordan, you don't have to play the animation because we want to save time here. who is your nuke of the night? Who is the number one GPP option for you now?
Oh, see, there's a lot of them, and they're all existing later on here. I'm just going to throw it out as the guy that I'm the most confident if all of the Pelicans end up out. Brandon Boston would be shooting guard, small forward, 4,200, played 37 minutes against Portland, whether they get their asses kicked or not, which they're probably going to against Cleveland. I think he just plays enough minutes to be viable. We've seen him with the Clippers. He is Jordan Klein's favorite player in the NBA, so that's cool. So there's some good juju there. I think that would probably be it. But as of right now, it's probably going to be the fifth starter of the Lakers that people don't want to be plugging in. And I think that's going to end up being Cam Reddish. So I'm going to say a flat 3K Cam Reddish nuke of the night.
Oh man, what direction do I want to go in now? You know what's funny? You know who I just reran everything. Here's somebody who's not pulling a ton of ownership that I came in overweight to, and it's funny because it's related to a super chat we got before. If we're getting all this exposure to the Lakers, just from like a game stack, which we don't think that much about in NBA, but actually am getting to a good amount of John Moran. He's now in over 20% of my lineups at single-digit projected ownership on the other side of this game. If all of these Lakers pieces that we want to be getting exposure to start going off, I would like to also have some exposure to John Morant in those same lineups. So John Morant now showing up in over 20% of my lineups. It's going to differentiate some of those Lakers lineups. Like, what is happening if the game goes to overtime? Then you're getting all those Lakers guys going off. It's an up pace game as well. So I kind of like the correlation of having more exposure to Morant with all of this exposure them getting to the Lakers. Because I've got D'Angelo Russell, Jackson Hayes, LeBron James, and Austin Reeves all in 30+% of lineups, Eric.
I'm changing my nuke of the night because, again, I don't know if it's going to be Connect or if it's going to be Cam Reddish. I'm going to make nuke of the night Luka Doncic. So John Morant, awesome if you want to be playing the game stack angle. I'll just take the guy I've projected for the most going up against the fastest team in the NBA. We have him under-owned relative to his optimal percentage, and now we have all the value and all the land. Am I just going to explode my dick at some point, or are you going to just play the video? What are we actually doing here, Jordan?
No, I told him not to, because I just want to, okay. We only have like 5 minutes here.
No, but he keeps playing it, and he keeps distracting me because it pops up on this no matter what, and it's like blinding every time. But anyway, Najee Marshall will likely start. No shit, Jason Kidd. Thanks a lot, bro. But we have that projected as such, so don't have to change anything there. Yeah, I'm going to make Luka Doncic nuke of the night. I saw that too, Jordan. Thanks.
All right. So Eric is going to be going with Luka, and yeah, completely reasonable way to go pay up and make your lineups, a little bit different in the field. Because what do we have now for Luka's projected ownership? Yeah, I mean, we got Luka at 19.9%. So not like massively contrarian or anything, but he's not pulling a crazy amount of ownership. So yeah, I think that Luka, if you want to pay up and get somebody who's not LeBron James, certainly look at Luka and GPPs. What do I have for Luka exposure? I have Luka. I'm right around the field with Luka. I have him in 20% of lineups myself, but I do a little bit more of Morant, and I like the correlation with the Lakers players there. So let's see what else we have as far as questions, if anything. And we have a one from Stokes. He wants to know how much Koloko tonight. I don't think so. I think Koloko is going to get minutes, but I only have 2 lineups with Christian Koloko right now.
I have 0. I don't know what to make of the minutes. I went 30, 15, and then 3 for LeBron at the 5, which again, there's some volatility to all of that. It's a very fragile projection.
Yeah. I mean, mostly a no, especially if you're just playing like 1, 2, 3 lineups. I would not recommend Koloko being in any of them. And then also, by the time more news comes out at late swap, he's more likely to be in less of my lineups than more, unless he starts, which would be really unexpected. Zach Attack wants to know Reeves and Mathurin or Suggs and Clay for FanDuel GPP. Reeves and Mathurin. Honestly, neither, though. I don't want to be playing guys from the first game on the slate anymore.
Yeah, I'm not playing anybody from the first game.
Yeah, and both sides of those, he's got Mathurin in one of the lineups. He's got Suggs in the other. It's not to say these guys are the worst plays. I just want more flexibility to be able to make swaps in my lineups for later. And while there's good looking options from the first game, I, at this point, rather not play them and just hope that they don't, like, you don't get like completely nuclear games from any of those guys. So Zach Attack, if you have to choose one, Reeves and Mathurin, but my preference would be that you don't play either of those guys there. Just a couple minutes left to go here, Eric. Anything in your lineups that's standing out to you that you did not expect as we have all this news and we're getting closer to lock?
Yeah, I'm playing just all of these guys with the assumption that we're going to get a lot of minutes for all the Lakers. I think D'Angelo Russell, I mean, I didn't want to do it, but he is in a lot of lineups at the moment. It's probably the guy that I want to get away from the most, and I'll probably hopefully get to turn some IO into, or, go down to IO from the Bulls side. Hopefully can get to some Pelicans. We'll see how that news ends up shaking out, but man, it's so hard to be able to tell you exactly what it's going to look like because it could change drastically based on the Pelicans or Chicago news there. I think, though, whatever that fifth starter ends up for the Lakers probably ends up a little bit undervalued looking at projections here and across the industry. So be on the lookout for that for sure.
Yeah, so for myself, just like more pay-up options showed up in lineups as more of the value opened up. So I'm just kind of scrolling through to see who those guys are. One of them I already mentioned. It was John Morant. He was my nuke of the night. Another one, though, Cat at $8,100 on DraftKings. More of a priority on DraftKings than FanDuel. But yeah, Cat at $8,100. He's playing big minutes for the Knicks. And another guy not really pulling all that much ownership, with a lot of the field looking to reasonably go cheap at the center position. I mean, considering what we've seen out of Cat so far this year, Eric, $8,100 is an egregious price tag.
Yeah, it's just horrendous. I love Cat. I played tons of Cat last slate along with Vooch. That ended up working out very, very nicely as Cat had a massive second half, despite the fact that they got their shit pushed in by Houston. But Karl Anthony Towns, there's no other big there. It's kind of like where are all the bigs? Where have they gone? We don't have any in LA right now with no Anthony Davis. We don't have any in New York behind Karl Anthony Towns. We don't have any period in Charlotte. We're starting 6'9" Taj Gibson. What a time to be alive.
There is still so much news that we're going to need for this slate. So Josh and I are going to be covering that on playback. Eric and I are wrapping up here in about 30 seconds. Here's what we're still waiting for. Starting lineups for any of these teams that have had players ruled out. Lakers are going to be the most important one because there's so many different directions they could go there. Then from the Pelicans, Zion Williamson's questionable. You still got Jose Alvarado questionable. Then also you've got Zach LaVine. He's still questionable tonight. So we could get Bulls value that ends up opening up. And then in addition to Zion being questionable, we also got Jordan Hawkins being questionable with Jose Alvarado. Mentioned him. Tari Eason is questionable for Houston. If Tari Eason is out, that probably shores up the minutes for Şengün a little bit. And then maybe that also could bring somebody like Amen Thompson a little bit more into the mix as a contrarian option. So right now, I'm going to be heading on over to playback. If you guys still want to be updated on all of the news that's about to break, including starting lineups, injuries, all that, while sweating the games, come join Josh and I over at playback, guys. If you haven't done it, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. Jordan, put that playback link into the chat. And there we go. Now Jordan's playing.
Zach LaVine out. Holy mother of Christ. Here we go.
All right. Zach LaVine ruled out. Josh and I are going to be covering that over at playback. See you guys over there.